Okay, it's the Chris Michaels Show, and back with me is one of our favorite guests, Dr. Joseph P. Farrell. He's going to regale us with brilliance. And Greg Bolden will join us momentarily. He is ironing his shoelaces and couldn't join on time, so we're going to chide him about that. Joseph, thank you very much for joining us in, early March?
Thanks for having me back, Chris.
On the eve of Purim. Are you excited about that?
Not really. No, I don't pay any attention to that, but that I take the hints though.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's not just that, right? We've got the planetary alignments. We've got an eclipse. Yep. We've got a full moon. I mean, what better time to unleash a third world war? What do you think?
Yeah, hey, listen, when I heard, I went to sleep Friday night and woke up the next morning and I didn't, I don't tune into the news until I come back to my office back here. So I wasn't aware that we're bombing the daylights out of Iran until that evening. And then I'm thinking, planetary alignments. We've got 6 planets out there all lined up in a neat, tidy row on the western horizon, and then a blood moon to boot. So, hey,
exactly.
The signs are propitious.
And I always say that Donald Trump acts astrologically and astronomically. He doesn't do anything major unless, quite literally, the stars and the moons are aligned. And this is another example of this.
Hey, listen, I'm with you there. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I've been thinking, watching this man work for the past 2 terms that he's been in office, and when he times things, it's not coincidence this Iran thing started as all of this was happening.
It's always that way. He's always acted that way, and I brought it up to a lot of people, and nobody wants to believe me. And I go, okay, just
no problem here.
Right. I'm glad you're on board. So I saw all of this. My prediction was that if they're going to do this, there's no way that they can come out of this unscathed. Mm-hmm. And we're already starting to see the propaganda rise. The United States is saying, we only have 5 people that were hurt in Operation, what is it called? Rising Matzah, Roaring Matzah, whatever it is. And I don't believe that.
It's Operation Epstein Fury. Come on here. Chris, get it right.
Listen, that brings up a good point. If you want to point to anybody in the Trump administration as Trump's handler, let's look at Lutnick. Yeah. He's all over the Epstein files. He's a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. He transverses the party lines like nobody's business. Yeah. And he's the one that's in charge of negotiating with the Ukrainians, the Iranians, and as we all know at this point, the West, including the United States and Israel, they are not good faith negotiating partners. Anytime they want to talk about some kind of deal, you have to look at it as if it is a stalling tactic so that they can redeploy, re-equip whatever forces they deem necessary to make a next offensive.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, as I told you before we started the recording, I am on an ambivalence continuum regarding this operation that runs to both extremes. So let's tackle with the pro-Trump part of my extreme, and then we'll get to the anti-Trump part of my extreme. Save the best for last.
Yeah.
On the pro-Trump side, I am not shedding one tear for the regime in Tehran. It is a brutal regime, and it does need to go. So on that side, I think if indeed, and that's the problem here, the subjunctive mood, If indeed this operation ends up with the overthrow of that regime, great. So far, it seems to be hanging on by a very, very slim thread. However, let's look at the actual geopolitical context in which this is happening. We're now, the regime in Tehran now not only has been decapitated, but it was decapitated so quickly that whoever was left in charge, we're now seeing they're spitting missiles all over the Middle East. And as a result, they're doing the stupidest dang thing that they can from a strategic point of view in attacking the Saudis, Bahrain, Qatar, all of these other countries that Iran has been a thorn in the side of. The Sunni Arab countries in the region are now lining up to take their own pot shots along with the United States and Israel at Iran. So the reaction to whoever's in charge in Tehran has been about the stupidest thing they could do. All right, now let's set all of that aside. Let's assume that they are successful in not only deposing that regime, but say bringing back the Shah, the crown prince, and basically making Iran a Western proxy again. Geopolitically, this puts the two major Eastern powers, China and Russia, in a world of hurt. And it absolutely tables China's Silk Road, Belt and Road Initiative, because any road in the future that is going to run between China and Europe is going to run through Russia. So it hurts the Russians the least of those two countries. But the other thing that people need to wrap their heads around, and I'm watching, I don't know, you're probably watching the same people as I'm watching, Chris. The alternative media, the right-wing favoring mainstream media in this country, I'm noticing, is saying, well, what this means is the Abraham Accords will pop back into existence and we'll be rid of this Shia terrorist supporting state. And that's a good thing. And my problem with the people saying, well, this is all wonderful, it's working out just marvelously, is let's not forget Saudi Arabia is one of the major Arab powers, one of the major Islamic powers in the world, that was a major role in the attacks on 9/11. Mm-hmm. They are importing their own brand of militant Islam. So if you think that you're getting rid of militant Islam by getting rid of one of its regimes, I got bad news for you. This is going to come back and bite people in a generation or so if, again, this whole operation is successful. Now, let's look at another interesting fact. You mentioned something I think that's very significant before the recording started. Iran, like Libya, is one of the few countries in the world that does not have a central bank that has a major control or influence coming from, let's just call it what it is, the Rothschild interest.
Oof. That's a third rail.
That's a third, yeah, that's a third rail. So, in other words, if you are intending to put into place a global financial system that is going to lock everybody down in a central bank digital currency system, and that's really what it is, it's a lockdown.
Correct.
Where the banksters get to operate behind a two-way mirror, and all of our transactions are completely visible, and none of theirs are. That's a tailor-made situation for tyranny. And if you think you have seen bankster theft before, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is why they're trying to tokenize everybody's assets and get everybody into that system. And Iran, say what you will about it, was not entering that system. They were trying to impose that system under their own control on their own people, just like China and Russia are trying to do. And that's really what this game is all about, as far as I'm concerned. So the geopolitical context here is crucial. The final thing that I think we have to just come right out and say is that, like it or not, this is a civilizational or a cultural, or to be more specific, a religious conflict. And what bothers me the most about what I'm seeing in terms of the Trump administration, it's looking to me, and I'll come right out and say it very bluntly, it's looking to me like this country is a colony, a proxy for the state of Israel. And I have to wonder just what the hold is. You know, this bothers me, that we're seeing all these attacks on people like, you know, Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, or, you know, people like this, for raising questions about the role of Israel in American foreign policy. The bottom line for me, Chris, is that nation has far too much influence and control over our policy. And the first thing that we need to do to restore genuine sovereignty in this country over our own domestic and foreign affairs is to abolish anyone holding political office who has a dual citizenship anywhere. Period.
I'll go one step further. I'll say not only if you have a dual citizenship are you banned from holding an office, but if you have a spouse that has dual citizenship, you can't play either.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of this money is made. Look at the Biden family. It wasn't Joe Biden, but it was everyone around him using his name.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Trumps now in office.
Yeah.
What you brought up reminds me of, well, actually two things. There is a birdcage liner website called JFeed, and Yair Kleinbaum, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his first name correctly, he penned this garbage. Carlson, Fuentes, and Owens must be jailed inside a World War II style internment camp. That's the title of his article. And then he says the First Amendment isn't a suicide pact, just as the greatest generation neutralized threats in 1942. We must stop influencers turning our soldiers against the commander-in-chief before the front lines collapse. Now, here's my problem. One,
well, number one, Mr. Kleinbaum, our friendship with Israel is not a suicide pact either.
Yes. And I would also like to add is that there is no signed document that aligns Israel with the United States.
Yeah,
the only thing that you have are memorandums of understanding.
Right.
So let's get that out into the open. The second thing, as far as I know, the United States has not declared war against Iran.
That's right.
So there is no justification for rounding up people that are against Israel.
Right.
And the Israel Project, or the Greater Israel Project, I should say. Do you believe this chutzpah?
Yes, I do, and I'll tell you why. Something began to happen after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and I think it was totally unexpected on the part of the people that engineered it. And there's no, and I say that, Chris, because I simply don't buy this Tyler Robinson FBI shooting a 30-06 of all things at a guy's neck.
They said it was a World War II rifle, then it was a modern rifle. Well, you know, the World War II Mausers don't shoot that.
Regardless of whether it's a German Mauser from World War II or a nice new shiny German Mauser from 1998, a 30-06 is going to go clean through the guy and probably obliterate most of his upper body anyway. But this narrative that they've concocted, it began to fall apart, and I think largely due to the initial efforts of Candace Owens. But they concocted such a narrative that when you start picking away at it, as she started to do, it appears that he started to turn against this whole evangelo-Zionist theology that so many American evangelicals hold, and to question it, and was apparently moving away from it when the assassination occurred. And it's interesting to me to look at what has happened to the commercials. I don't know if you've heard these, the commercials that the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews have been running on American talk radio.
I haven't.
I have listened. I listen to most of the talk radio on the alternative media. Everyone from Candace Owens to Ian Carroll and Baron Coleman, and that whole panoply of people, to Glenn Beck. Okay, so I'm listening to the whole spectrum of the media, and you ought to hear the way the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is backpedaling as fast as they can.
Really?
Because their commercials prior to all of this stuff coming out about Charlie Kirk's murder was, you need to send your money to bless all these poor Jews in Israel, because the Bible says that I will bless those who bless thee and curse those that curse thee. And so get your blessing, send support to Israel now. Something to that effect.
Yeah, right.
More recently, the commercials have changed to, it's not about supporting anything political. I kid you not,
okay.
Chris. Yeah, it's not about that, Chris. It's not about politics at all. Just send us your money.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in other words, like it or not, it's had an effect. And the effect that it's had is, for the first time, I've been waiting for this all my life. I come from a high church Episcopalian bead counting, incense swinging, smells and bells sort of ecclesiastical tradition. And I've been pounding my fists and stomping my feet that this whole evangelo-Zionist thing is not traditional Christian doctrine. It is not.
No.
Where it gets its start, that's 19th century with Scofield and the so-called Scofield Reference Bible. And by the way,
Correct.
a lot of oil millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
And
what are the odds, right?
What are the odds of that? So I've been waiting all of my life for this debate to really be had on a public, on a level that enters the public discussion in a way that it has not before. And by golly, that's what's happening. Now, it needs to happen. Tucker Carlson may not be the world's best theologian, but he knows something is wrong.
Right.
Candace Owens has raised the issue. Everybody is, David Hodges, they're all raising this issue in a way that has not been raised before. And to me, it's high time. And that's why this war, to me, also occurs at not only an astrological time frame that's very, very interesting and suggestive in itself, but it's occurring also at a time frame when that theological support that Israel unquestionably had amongst most American evangelicals for the past 50 to 60 years is beginning to unravel.
Right.
So this had to be done now.
Correct.
Now, what Mr. Kleinbaum's post suggests to me, and I've been warning people about this too, is Christians, if you are a traditional Christian in this country, get ready, because they're going to outlaw your belief and your ability to say it and promote it and stand by it, and they're going to throw you into a camp. And you expect any sympathy from the Muslims in this country? No.
I suspect not. So it's interesting you bring that up, because the Trump administration has been absolutely trying to get the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism codified.
Yes.
So they can't make it a law, But what they can do is say, we observe this kind of definition, and we hope other businesses do too.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's the real problem. And if you read their definition, it basically encompasses anything that you can possibly think of, including the New Testament.
Right. Exactly.
And that is the antithesis of Christianity. You can't cut out the New Testament and still proclaim that you're a Christian. It just doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
The other thing that goes against the First Amendment, I can say whatever I want. Doesn't matter how gross it is. Doesn't matter how funny it is. I could work blue. I could be, formal. It doesn't matter. I'm still allowed to say it. And I think that all of these people that are potentially looking at the idea and saying, "Oh, this is we have to protect Jewish people." No. That's the wrong way to look at it. And on the other end of the spectrum, people saying, "Oh, we have to be able to attack Jewish people because of whatever thing." That's not correct either. You have to look at it as who is pulling the strings to stop the First Amendment.
Right.
Who are the ones that care about that? Because I can promise you, those people, if they are people, they don't care about whether or not you're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim.
No, they don't.
They're just using Judaism as the vehicle to remove your freedom of speech.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And, I have tried, Chris, to figure out a way to convince people, number one, to be against the current Israeli government's policies, or for that matter, even against this kind of evangelo-Zionism, is not to say that you're against Jews.
Correct.
I've said many times, I believe in the right of the state of Israel to exist. It is pointless to talk about trying to turn the clock back 60 years.
Yeah, it's another idiotic argument.
Yeah, it's the same sort of stinking thinking that wants to make people that live now responsible for the sins of their ancestors. And again, on that score, Tucker Carlson is right. There is no such thing as an inherited guilt through your bloodline. It just, it's not there. The problem that America's going to have, I think, is coming down to this, that the influence of that group is so off the charts, beyond it's unproportional. Correct. To the size of the group of people it's representing, and it has an inordinate amount of influence over the policies,
domestic politics, all politics. And I think you're absolutely right. They are trying to say that certain statements in the New Testament are not acceptable or anti-Semitic, and so on and so forth, and they're going to try and ban it. So I'm here to warn people. If you take any sort of traditional Christian view, expect it to come. This government's going to turn on you. It already has. It already has, in a certain sense, just by the amount of stuff that we see going on now, and the amount and the way the coverage of this genocide going on in Gaza has been, if covered at all, papered over and whitewashed out. Do you know the chicken hawk, chicken S Mark Levin? I utterly detest that 10-cent SOB. He broadcasts like he's got a clothesline hanger thing on his nose,
and he shouts and screams.
Right. And he said that this new missile, he reposted a video of one of the Iranian strikes. He's claiming that this missile that Iran used was a cluster munition, and they are engaging in war crimes. And I went to myself, have you not seen any picture of what happened in Gaza? Any picture?
Yeah.
Like the hypocrisy is off the charts.
It is.
And I brought up the IHRA's. Well, they've got a whole page of what it is considered to be anti-Semitic, but I'll read you the one that we were trying to focus on. Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, e.g., claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood libel to categorize Israel or Israelis. Next one I thought was cute, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Round them up, put them in concentration camps. But if you claim
rules for thee, not for me. Look, I said years ago, Chris, and by the way, I want to remind people, my late brother-in-law was Jewish and the son of a very, very famous rabbi.
Oh.
So don't talk to me about anti-Semitism and all of this crap. I actually told Mike one day, and Mike had problems himself with some of the policies of that government over there in Tel Aviv. I actually told Mike one day that, if you get right down to it, to claim to be the chosen people or the master race is two sides of the same coin. And his response was to lean back in the chair and kind of, you know what, you're right. That was his comment on it. So, it's people have to get this idea that being Jewish is being Zionist. Not all Jews are Zionist, folks.
Correct.
That's not what to put it.
That's not what the ADL likes to push. The ADL likes to claim that if you are you can't be one without the other in either direction. Right?
Yeah, I know.
And it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic.
It's not just tragic. They are trying to control the narrative.
Correct.
And they are making it thereby by equating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, which are, and for that matter, anti-Zionism isn't even the same sort of policy as the current government of Israel is trying to promote. So, we're dealing with three things here. What they're doing is they're shutting down any debate or any discussion.
Correct.
And we go back to what you just said. This is an attack on the First Amendment.
Right.
And if they are trying to shut down that, then there's not going to be any progress anywhere in the Middle East, period.
And I think that's the goal.
That is the goal. They want to blow it up. I have to agree. They literally want to torch the whole region.
They do. And they want to balkanize it.
They want to torch it and balkanize it. In other words, their goal, let's cut to the chase. Their goal is to end the religious basis of culture in that region. In other words, they want to eradicate any muscular, they want to eradicate any muscular form of the religions in that region of the world. They want to take all opposition that those religions would have to their intended global paradise out of the picture. That's really what it's all about.
Well, they've done a fine job in the West. United States.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is precision. It may have taken them a little bit longer, but it is here. It is here. Yeah. I like to draw parallels to prior eras. And I was doing a little bit of research on World War I because I don't think World War I gets enough attention.
Oh, no.
And I found this quote by Republican from Nebraska. This was a Senate speech on April 4th of 1917. The guy's name was George W. Norris. And he was doing it, like I said, against going to war against Germany. We are going into war upon the command of gold. We're going to run the risk of sacrificing millions of our countrymen's lives in order that other countrymen may coin their lifeblood into money. We are about to do the bidding of wealth's terrible mandate. I mean, this sums it up perfectly about what's going on, especially if you start factoring in central banking digital currencies, central banks, 15-minute cities, the whole 9 yards. Could you draw any other parallels to World War I that we're experiencing right now?
Yeah, there's an interesting one. And people really don't think about what the implications of it are. Vladimir Lenin was transported to St. Petersburg from his exile in Switzerland through Germany and then on up into Sweden and then over to Finland and down into St. Petersburg. So in other words, Vladimir Lenin, a known revolutionary, was transported through German lines with the knowledge of the German authorities, including Kaiser Wilhelm II himself. Okay. The man who persuaded the imperial government that this would be a good idea, that the Bolsheviks will take Russia out of the war, will free up all those millions of troops and be able to hit the Western allies like nothing they've ever seen before, which in fact happened. The man who persuaded the Kaiser of the wisdom of that policy was Max Warburg. Now, hang on.
Heard of that before?
Heard of that name before.
Yeah.
On the other side of the Atlantic, Leon Trotsky set out for St. Petersburg from the other side of the war, because America's in the war at this point against the Central Powers. So we are at war with Germany, okay? This is what I want people to really latch on to. And he sets out for St. Petersburg, by the way, with a lot of money that is donated to him. I won't mention from where, but people can guess. People can guess. It's a matter of record. A very famous Wall Street investment firm. Let's just put it that way. And he ends up arriving in St. Petersburg within a few weeks of Vladimir Lenin. Now, what that suggests is that there's some international coordination going on. Now, interestingly enough, and I'm going to tell you why it was able to be coordinated or how it was able to be coordinated. When the Bolsheviks staged their revolution in St. Petersburg, what are some of the first things that they shut down, that they seized control of and that they shut down?
Churches, maybe?
The banks.
Oof.
Why? Because the banks have access to international communications and clearing. So in other words, we don't want any repeat of what got us into power being staged by these same people using their international financial communications networks.
Interesting.
Remember who was trading on the London Stock Exchange based on his understanding of who had won the Battle of Waterloo hours prior to anyone else being able to do that. Remember who that was.
More third rail stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So is there coordination here? Yeah, you betcha. Is this in addition to a religio-cultural agenda that we're seeing emerge in the Middle East? And again, folks, I am not against the idea of saying goodbye to that awful regime. It is truly awful.
Yeah.
But I am not willing to say that the people leading this charge for regime change have lily white laundry.
They're not wearing white to the wedding anytime soon.
They're not wearing the purest linen white sackcloth. Let's just put it that way. Since we started out talking about, Purim, okay.
There's also another parallel that I'd like to bring up involving World War I. Mr. Bernard Baruch. Have you heard of him before?
Yes.
Yeah.
In what context are you talking about him?
Wall Street financier and advisor to dilapidated old fool, President Woodrow Wilson. He was the chairman of War Industries Board from March 1918 until it was dissolved in early 1919. Now, why do I bring this person up?
That's right.
Not a lot of people know that the reason why the United States was able to get into that war was because Mr. Bernard Baruch was the one that was setting the prices of every single resource in the American industry.
Yep.
His quote was, "We had the power of priority, which was the greatest power in the war. And I assumed that responsibility, and that final determination rested within me." And this was part of his testimony to the House Select Committee on Expenditures in the War Department, the Graham Committee hearings in 1919. But here's another quote, which I thought was very telling. Baruch said, "We fixed the prices in cooperation with the industries. But when we fixed the price, we fixed it for the total production, not alone for the Army and the Navy, but for the Allies and the civilian population."
Yep.
Now, there is a little anecdote that Henry Ford talks about involving Bernard Baruch, and that is the price of copper. And it was essentially, prior to the war, the price of copper was going at about 30 cents a pound. And then he said, well, we need to have the government, the real price of copper should be around 16 cents a pound because we need to, help the war. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, he testified that no, the government actually bought the copper for 27 cents a pound. On top of it, the Army said we only need 45,000 tons. They bought 450,000 tons. They bought almost 100 times, whatever it was, the amount. Mm-hmm. And then he was also caught saying, well, now that the government had all this surplus and they bought it at a premium, what happened to it? Where did it go? Did the original sellers buy it back at the same price? And he said, no, they bought it back for 15 cents a pound.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Do we see the same kind of parallels here with these non-governmental organizations, these Boeings, these Northrop Grummans that are just taking us for a ride? If they can find the mullahs in Iran, but still somehow can't find anybody on the Epstein list, I've got a real problem.
Well, yeah. Look, I have a problem.
Oh, wait, before you answer that, this vagabond has finally showed up, Greg.
The day job's over. I got out of the classroom. I'm here.
He's
Dr. Farrell, good to see you.
Good to see you.
He's in a cardigan. He hasn't had a shave or a haircut for a long time. Doesn't have any 2 bits to send along to people.
A penny for your thoughts, sir.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I was just catching up, listening to your conversation there, so that way I knew where I was jumping in. So I appreciate you for bringing me back on.
So let's go, Joseph. World War I, Bernard Baruch.
Well, is there any parallel to that? Listen, if you scratch and sniff around the Trump administration, for a moderate amount of time, you're going to run into what would have been Bernard Baruch's wet dream, and that's this whole sovereign wealth fund idea that he's quietly trying to promote in this second administration of his, and I find it the most alarming thing about this second administration, because it's nothing else than central bank kleptocurrency, as I like to call cryptocurrencies, on steroids. And what people have to wrap their mind around is that by tokenizing assets, I've just got done recording the year-end wrap-up with Catherine Fitz, and we were hammering this over and over again. Because, and I put it to her this way, what Trump is doing with the tokenization of assets that all of these companies like BlackRock and Larry Fink and people like this want to do is, number one, they're turning the American currency into the Soviet currency. Why? Because in the Soviet Union, what was the backing of the currency was the assets of the country. And who owned the assets? Well, it was the people. So the Russian Soviet ruble was a tokenized asset that every single Russian citizen owned a small decimal portion of that asset. which is why their currency was nearly worthless. However, who had the control of the asset? Who actually had the physical, tangible assets? Well, it was the apparatchik. So the tokenization of assets under Trump's scheme, first of all, represents the Soviet system. What they're doing is a tender. We're going to give you computer blips. And by the way, their value will be regulated on whether you're good little boys and girls and go along with what we tell you to think. And in return, you give us control of your hard assets. That's what he's doing. This is building out that digital system on steroids. And who wasn't going along with it? We just got done with that.
Yep. Places like Iran. I mean, it's horrifying to be around during this time, in my opinion. I mean, of all the things, of all the sci-fi nonsense and storylines that we have to endure, Skynet, that's the best we can do. I'm glad it's not zombies. Zombies are the worst sci-fi conception ever. I hate it. It's disgusting. It's stupid. And it just, like I said, I try to go back to prior eras to figure out exactly if there was something else going on. And I wanted you to bring up, because I heard you speak about it. I heard you broach the topic, not actually speak about it. I wanted to bring up the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, because I'm thinking that we have to go back to the actual source of what it is to be this country, what it is to be an American. And if we really wanted to make this argument, I suspect that we could, we have to also incorporate the French Revolution and the French and Indian War and all that. But let's go to the Anti-Federalists. I want to talk about that. I want you to talk about it, because not a lot of people realize that there were Federalists and Anti-Federalists when the United States was being formed. And not only were there the Federalist Papers, but there were also the Anti-Federalist Papers.
Yes. Well, the Anti-Federalists, to put it briefly, the Anti-Federalists were those people who were opposed for whatever reason, and the reasons ran across the spectrum, but who were opposed to the Constitution that emerged from the 1787 Philadelphia Constitutional Convention. The final ratification, the final state to ratify came a couple years later. So you can call it the Constitution of 1787, 1789, whatever. In other words, the current Constitution of the country. The Anti-Federalists were the people that were opposed to ratification of that Constitution as it emerged from the convention. And within that opposition, you had really hardcore opposition that weren't in favor of it at all, no matter how many amendments you attached to it to make it acceptable. All right. I would put people like Patrick Henry in that camp. There were more moderate Anti-Federalists that were opposed to it, so long as it did not include a statement that emerged finally as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. Now, I'm kind of a more radical Anti-Federalist, and I'll tell you why. Because in any conceptual system, you have to look very carefully not only at the concepts of the system, but at the order of their importance as they are summarized or held within the system. In other words, you have to look at the algorithm. All right. Now, and here I'm following some of the more philosophical critics that are in the Anti-Federalist papers. One of the biggest problems that the more thoughtful of the Anti-Federalists had with the Constitution as it emerged was that they recognized that it was a constitution for plutocracy and oligarchy. In other words, it was a money power constitution. So they looked at people like Alexander Hamilton as, the epitome of that whole principle. And by the way, let's remember something. Who wrote the very first Federalist paper?
Greg, take the question.
Alexander Hamilton. And in that very first first paragraph of that very first Federalist paper, how does he refer to the country that he's trying to establish this new constitution for? He refers to it not as a republic, but as an empire.
Oof.
Yep.
There you go, folks. That's the root of my opposition to this whole system. But number two, if this Constitution was really all about preserving the liberties of the people, promoting the general welfare and the common defense, and blah, 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 all this narrative that we've been hearing all of our lives, then front and center in the prologue to the Constitution itself, not as something tacked on to it to get it ratified, meaning the Bill of Amendments, the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Afterthoughts, as I like to call it. Okay, you would have enumerated those right up front in order to form a more perfect union, promote freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. That would have been in the prologue because that's part of your first principles as to why you're forming this Constitution. You don't tack them on as amendments to something else. So in other words, what I'm saying is part of the thinking of the people in Philadelphia at the time. This is why I would have been an anti-federalist. And had I been in the Virginia House of Burgesses, I would have been right there with Patrick Henry saying, yeah, go Patrick, here, you know. Because if they cannot include that as part of their thinking as they're crafting this government, then there is right away something wrong. And that something wrong began to manifest itself no sooner than the ink was dry, Chris, when you had the Whiskey Rebellion. And what do you have Al Hamilton and George Washington doing to put down the Whiskey Rebellion? Well, they're riding around in their fancy coaches in Western Pennsylvania with the military. And by the way, let us not forget that Alexander Hamilton wants to execute these people. The guy's a piece of, that was too much even for George. So he hightailed it back to Mount Vernon. You know, I'm out of here, Al. I'm not going along with that. You know,
is this Al Hamilton or Al Haig?
Well, exactly. You know, I'm in charge here.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's been a farce. And, you know, the other problem, and, you know, hindsight is always 20, but come on, folks. The whole problem with what they were trying to do at Philadelphia was revealed with the Civil War. You were trying to settle, and here is why this is so important for today. Not only for this country today, but for the world today. You were trying to solve the problem of two completely contradictory cultures and types of culture coexisting in the same country through mere political process. I'll repeat that. You were trying to solve the problem of two mutually contradictory and very different cultures trying to coexist in one country through mere political process. You had the secularized Calvinist New England Yankees, and you had the agrarian slaveholding South. That was, by the way, mostly Anglican, whereas you had the Reformed and Puritan Calvinist influence in New England. So we tend to think of that whole revivalist religion that is so much a part of American evangelicalism as being native to the South. It is not. It is native to New England and New York. And it was exported to the South by the abolitionists after the war. So in other words, the culture was remade in the image of the North via the process of Reconstruction. So you were trying to hold these two mutually contradictory cultures together through a mere political process, and it blew up. It was Please hear my words now. It was unsuccessful.
Almost sounds like as contradictory as Christian Zionism.
Yeah, 650,000 people dead. That's not a big success. It's not a big success. So, and we're still trying to do that. We've got the same situation today. We have two contradictory cultures that we're trying to hold together by mere political process. And a famous talk show host that I love to quote came out very bluntly a couple years ago as he was commenting on all this and said the Union is not a suicide pact. But that's what it becomes under who? Under Abe Lincoln. It becomes a suicide pact. Once in, never out. Can't divorce. No matter what the circumstances are.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Who do you feel? What cultures? You say two different cultures. So, to me, it would seem that the culture has become both a literal culture of where people's differences come from their shared experiences of family, maybe the values that they hold. And then we also have this, I see where politics has become a new religion for so many people.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that has become a culture as well.
Yep.
How would you define the many different cultures? And then I'm going to add a piece back to the Anti-Federalist for this, because I think this is important. We don't have people that understand their rights.
Yes. Yeah.
So if those cultures, you have one side of a culture that says, well, no, there isn't like an inherent human right. And another side of the culture says there is.
Right.
Then the Anti-Federalists that helped give us a clearer Bill of Rights, so to speak, within the drafting, we're now seeing a crisis 250 years later within these cultures. So how would you describe the different cultures at play, and how does that maybe play into a erasure of Bill of Rights on purpose or not on purpose?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I think you yourself already said what the difference between these two, there are at least two cultures in this country that are contradictory. If you want to look at it in very crude, simplistic terms, it's between a culture that says, number one, effectively, that there is no God, and therefore there are no transcendent rights, and therefore everything is merely a relative cultural or political value or process that we and our experts, this is always a key component of this kind of secular thinking, that there are certain experts that are going to run everything and do it smoothly. Think Woodrow Wilson, again, and Colonel Mandel House and all that ilk that Wilson brought with him into the swamp. President of Princeton. Well, who better to run the country, and Wilson himself in some of his personal statements sounds like a 21st century technocrat. So, he's all there. On the other hand, you have a culture that says, no, there is God, there is transcendent virtue. And I don't even use the term values, because values is that term coming out of that secular culture. I prefer the term virtue, because virtue in traditional thinking is inherent to humanity as a God-given principle of human nature. And therefore, the other thing that you see happening in these two cultures is one of these cultures wants to remake human nature. Transgenderism, transhumanism, cyborgs, we're going to download your consciousness when you die, and on all this nonsense goes, and we're going to tear down Christ the Savior Cathedral over there across the Moscow River and build a temple to new Soviet man. Okay. The other side says, no, there are certain principles, namely reason, morality, goodness, virtue, and so on, that are inherent to human nature because they have been put there by God, and to tamper with those is to challenge and to defy God. So you're dealing right there at the outset with something far more fundamentally contradictory than even that opposition in the two cultures back in the antebellum period before the American Civil War. Because at least in that case, you were dealing with two different cultures that were at least nominally Christian. Although you could make the argument that the transcendentalists in New England had long ago jettisoned, Ralph Waldo Emerson and Walt Whitman and people like that. And they had very definitely rejected all of that Christian trapping to their Calvin. They kept the Calvinism without the Christianity, in other words. So it was a very strange thing. And then you have Jeff Davis attending St. Paul's Episcopal Church every Sunday. You're in different worlds here. It's much worse than that now. We see it, where Chris is in with the Islamianist in charge of New York City. Mm-hmm. We're looking at these blue strongholds. This is why I had to get out of California. It's because the general culture was anti-God. And it didn't matter that I wasn't living in LA. I had to get out of the state because that way of thinking was suffusing everybody's thought process. I had to get out. It's not me. It's just not me. That's what you're confronted with, I think, Greg.
Now, I heard you say something that relates, I think, to where we are modern times. Okay. You mentioned Woodrow Wilson. Huh. And I think I told you a long time ago when we were speaking, I said, I always call him the bastard Woodrow Wilson. That's my nickname for him.
Have you ever noticed how much like a Bush he looks? But anyway, go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay, so 1913, he creates the Federal Reserve, right?
Yes.
And I can't help but notice a parallel in 2026 to Donald Trump and the Board of Peace and the $10 billion, the $1 billion buy-in of seeing this as a response directly to BRICS.
Uh-huh.
He is the lifetime appointee as the director. So it means after he's done being president, Donald Trump will continue to oversee this. The countries that have signed up that are all involved. If you get an opportunity to read up on this is really interesting considering the Iran bombing. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, Armenia, and many others paying $1 billion for this permanent status. Mm-hmm. What do they all have in common? Guess what? They're not aligned with something that I've been talking about for the past 5 years, BRICS. Mm-hmm. They're not aligned with Russia. They're not aligned with India, with China. Venezuela, by the way, which was trying to get in as a charter member, that's off the books now, which then tells me that Donald Trump is playing a completely different long game than any political parties are talking about, which is why we had to go back to that conversation to understand it.
I will go just a teensy little bit further out on that twig with you, Greg. And I really have to doff my hat because you're thinking, let me just tell you, you're thinking exactly what Catherine Fitz is thinking, exactly what I'm thinking, and I suspect a whole lot of other people are thinking about this whole Board of Peace, sovereign wealth fund, this whole panoply of Trump scams. Because what Trump is doing is he's taking the Hillary and Bill Clinton Foundation idea one step further.
It's on crack. Yes.
It's on steroids. He is creating a non-governmental, non-profit foundation for political action on an international scale that is going to dwarf BlackRock and Bill and Hillary's piddly little influence peddling operation. No, this what he's doing is he's creating a non-state actor.
Oh, yes, he's creating that. Now, let me give you my theory as to what we're seeing, and then I want you to react to it.
Okay.
And Michaels, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this. I woke up pretty irate over the weekend when I saw the bombing because I'm going 47 years. We've known that there's been atrocities. 47 years, they've been threatening America.
Bingo.
47 years, all this has been going on under different administrations.
Yeah.
Why now? But I think I have a theory, and I'm going to run it by the audience, and I'd like you to respond, Joseph, on this. So I think the first part, if we're playing chess, begins with Venezuela. Venezuela, we need the oil here in the United States because if Iran shuts down the strait, we can't get the oil. Now, that oil game is really important in Venezuela as well because that enables us to help out Europe and weakens Russia with Ukraine and their war that they've had there. Donald Trump sees the Ukraine-Russia conflict as a depletion of Russia's ammunitions, their soldiers, and a great time to be able to take his globalist view, not the WEF, not anybody else, but his, to finally put a dagger into BRICS and enrich himself long term. And the second part is after Venezuela, the next thing you have to attack is Iran. And the reason you attack Iran is because China is dependent on Iran for all of their oil. So if you can attack and get that, now you have both dogs that were biting you in check.
And Russia's dependent on Iran for its drones.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So we're together.
I've outlined the same scenario on my news and views and in vid chat. Oh, yeah.
So I look at this as a lone play of this is actually not about Iran leadership, the Ayatollah. This is about BRICS and the dollar.
Yes.
And a central bank digital currency long term.
Yes.
What's about to come in, which then explains why you go to Saudi Arabia, become best friends, hold their football, so to speak, make sure that the money is going to be there to adopt the policies, put a board of peace that figures out the Middle East first, have Jared Kushner go in there, figure out what a peace dollar might be. Right? That peace dollar, to me, I'm seeing the Federal Reserve, the creature on Jekyll Island. Instead, it's the creature coming from the Middle East. And the Trump, they had plenty of time to plan this out. So what's your reaction to all that?
Well, I've outlined the very same scenario in some of my news and views, in some of my vid chats. I've just got done outlining it with Catherine on her wrap up. Precisely the same scenario. I would only add that if you're going to look at it as a war that is being fought to maintain not only the reserve currency status of the dollar, but the freedom to change the nature of the dollar itself. And that's two different things. Because if you're on reserve currency status, you don't really get, because there's so many holders of your currency, you don't really get to change the nature of that currency without their input. So what this is I just got done before you came on with us, mentioned this to Chris because we outlined a very similar scenario. This is about taking down the fact that, like Libya, Iran does not have a central bank that's under the thumb of the Rothschilds. So in other words, you're looking at a war that is being fought to create the collateral system necessary to maintain the reserve status of the dollar. Tokenized assets, folks, in where? The Middle East. We're back to that again. And you're doing it in such a way that will permit you to thereby change the nature of the dollar to that Soviet style tokenized asset currency. And by the way, it's not going to be on paper. It's going to be in the form of
stable coin.
Yeah, it's going to be in the form of computer blips, folks. And they are so secure, we don't have to worry about anything happening to those because, the blockchain is totally secure and free and remote from all hacking attempts. And you don't have to worry about power outages or losses of your records. We're going to keep it all in the cloud or up there on the moon for you. Yeah, right.
Well, even the name peace dollar, when you think about if they were to create this based upon the money that they're bringing in, basically what they could do, I guess, is backed by each of the members' funds that they're putting in $1 billion. They could create a stable coin under the guise of international aid. They could then, after that, trade in to unstabilize certain regions that they'd like to and say, well, we're going to author peace coins to you in order for you to behave.
Folks, bingo. Let me interrupt you, Greg, to say, doff my hat, bingo, that's exactly what they're going to do. All foreign aid is going to come in the form of the peace dollar, and in the form of a kleptocurrency. That's how it's going to come. Yeah, we're going to help you rebuild. Just use our currency. And by the way, that currency is going to be a digital currency. It's going to be a stable coin. Just do that. Get enough people doing that, and that will stabilize the reason. And by golly, we're going to be able to put everybody on that surveillance network. Oh, boy. Great. We got to take out the competing network in Iran. That's exactly what they're up to. Exactly what they're up to.
Yeah, in that case, it's destabilizing a new Fed.
Yes.
This is everything that I was concerned about happening.
Yeah.
I just, I didn't see my own ignorance in all this. I didn't see this happening with Trump after his first term. When all the billionaire technocrats showed up in the second term, I knew we were in trouble.
Yeah.
But man, this really does seem like they spent 4 years conducting a plan and figuring things out and then bringing it back in. And Michael's called it. Michael said, I believe we're going to have a Trojan horse moment with Donald Trump in the second term. And I was wrong. I completely missed this.
Yeah, Chris, you were absolutely correct. And this was my my problem as well, because initially, you go back a few years to what I was saying about Trump in the first, when he was running for president the first time, was, I acknowledge that he was a deep state candidate, but I completely misidentified the faction of the deep state that was looking at him long term. I don't think I misidentified him at the faction supporting him at the time, but they weren't the deepest and most powerful faction. But the one that backs him now, I think Chris is absolutely right. They took the Biden 4 years and used that, that chaos and catastrophe of, I want to use language I can't use in polite company.
Who's the polite company?
Yeah, I was
Michael's
wondering, Greg, do you have anybody around? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm looking around.
Well, my little doggy, for one thing, Okay, but anyway, no, I think they used that 4 years to not. They tried to get rid of him and to ruin his chance at a political career. When that didn't work, they fell back on Plan B, and Plan B was, we need to send him messages like cooperate or die. Okay, so we had the assassination attempts, and we had all of these people brought in, as you say, all of these technocrats and so on, into the second administration. And like you, I thought, oh, that's who's running this. So, doff my hat to Chris for getting it right, and for that matter, Catherine Fitz for getting it right. But I think there's a part of Trump that now is if there was anything of the first Trump, I think it's been submerged in this international globalist agenda that we see going on. Everything else is the occasional window dressing. I literally think now that what they did with Trump, Greg, is they made him the same pitch that they made Ronald Reagan. We'll let you run the domestic policy and so on, but you're going to take George Bush as your vice president, and he's going to keep an eye on the foreign policy and the money and all of that for us. I literally think that's what they did with Trump.
So when you talk to Catherine or conversations, the name Steve Bannon, have you gotten into Steve Bannon's role in continuing to be able to influence Donald Trump from afar? And the reason why I ask this, I recently spoke with Roger Stone about a week ago. And he was very interested in some information that was sent my way by somebody in DC that she claims there's videos that are incriminating on Trump that Bannon's holding. And they continue Bannon's network. This is her words. They're continuing to invite people to events, hotel retreats. They're bringing girls out. They're bringing coke out. And they're filming everything in order to compromise. And when I went back in, her words were, her understanding unverified is Bannon has a video of Trump that makes Melania look bad.
Oh, wow.
apparently looked really bad. So I guess this whole game, and we see this with Epstein and all this other stuff, has his name come up with anything that it shows that you've done on Solari Report, or is he still off the radar? Because I think this guy's
no. His name has not come up in any of the discussions Catherine and I have had. Although I have to say that Catherine maintains such a worldwide network of people in localities that she's in contact with almost constantly. So whether it has come up in any of those conversations or anything like that, she doesn't need a much larger audience and has a much larger conversation going than I have. So it would not surprise me if he has not come up at certain other instances with some of our other guests and so on. But that said, the thing that has come up, how to put this, I'm struggling for words.
Well, no one's polite around us, so.
Well, no, it's not that. It's kind of, I also lost kind of the thread I was going to go with this, but the problem that we both have with Epstein is there is something there, and we're not really certain as to where the pressure for the release of these files is coming from. This is what bothers me the most.
I can take a stab at that.
Sure.
But go ahead.
Well, I don't know. This is my problem. I don't know. To me, the other aspect of this that enters discussion, and what Catherine and I have talked about is, and that Chris and I were talking about earlier, is this whole Charlie Kirk assassination thing has some sort of tie-in to that, and it has some sort of tie-in to what's happening with Trump, and we're not exactly sure what. So in other words, we're viewing all of these things that are happening now as related. They're deep events in the sense that Professor Peter Dale Scott talks about, these deep events that influence politics domestically and internationally. And we don't know exactly what it is.
Let me show you evidence of something that
Okay.
I don't think anyone's really seen. So I'll give you behind the scenes here. I'll explain what this is in just a quick moment. What I have up on here is L Strategies LLC, founded in Georgia, making transfers to people like Gavin Wax. And you're seeing him getting paid $2,000 in a Zelle transfer in order to post content for Miles Gui, which, was going back towards messages for China. And this is during the exact same time period, what's up on the screen, as Steve Bannon was, and this is the reason why I'm bringing it up, because it ties to, I think, Charlie Kirk and everything else. Okay. Where Steve Bannon was, what's the word I'm looking for? He was the chief for Donald Trump. This is the same time period. Okay. Now, this is Steve Bannon bringing these contracts. Now, the contract, I spoke with the person who actually wrote the contract. And I have a copy of the contract. Back in 2023, there was this one here that came later, but there were contracts written years before. And when we get down to the bottom of it, here you can see Jared Craig, company authorized member, with Miles Gui, who happens to be in prison now. This was during work with Steve Bannon. The reason why I share this with you, Joseph, and the Charlie Kirk connection, everything else, I've been working on stories that I think are quite dangerous of the influencer networks that have tried to get within reach of Donald Trump and have been successful. And what I'm discovering is there are people like Bannon and others that are at the top that are tying to individuals in other countries that we seem very compromised. And there are people that people follow on the news networks like, oh, he's America first. But these type of contracts show anything but being America first. So when you say, who is pulling the strings? I know, people right now, the popular things to say, oh, it's, Israel pulling Donald Trump. I don't think it's so simple to make that statement. I think the statement is so much more complex into the money networks as far as who is having influence. And I think the web is so tangled that it really is becoming a distortion of reality as far as this different dimensional war that's going on for the psyche of our country. And that is the Charlie Kirk assassination. I think in general, like I don't buy the official narrative.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. And to me, if that guy really was in the middle of the Trump administration advising him daily and best friends with JD Vance, and all of a sudden this guy disappears and he makes predictions about what just happened over the weekend last April, and now it's all coming true. This guy was looking behind the curtain, and it looks like he was expendable.
I would agree. This is why I'm glad you brought Kirk into this. Now, I said earlier with Chris that I think that if you look at Israeli influence over this government, it's looking like we're a colony. By that, I did not mean to exclude other agents of influence over this government, because, as you say rightly, it is a very, very tangled picture, and just about every interest is represented and has influence, except the American people and the country itself. That's about the only one that doesn't seem to have any real representation. So in that situation, you're dealing with something that is so corrupt. We're how to put this? We're in the Gorbachev stage of the Soviet Union in terms of corruption. The system is so rotten, it cannot continue and will not continue. And I say that especially even if they get all of their surveillance into place. The reason being is you're dealing with mafia dons, and they are going to turn on each other for control over that whole mechanism of power, and in the process destroy it. I've been saying that for 30 years. Charlie Kirk, I agree, because everything that, I've been following that one very closely, which amazes me because I never followed Charlie Kirk. The first time I heard him on his old radio say Shabbat Shalom on a Friday evening for his sign off, I said, bye, I'm gone. Well, I came back to interest in this whole assassination business of him precisely because it's now apparent that he was, as you say, peering behind the curtain, and he was seeing all sorts of financial influence over his own organization. And I think that's why he really ordered that Doge-style audit of Turning Point USA, because he had identified the Jewish financiers. He already knew who they were because, they hauled his ass up to someplace in East Hampton, and to read the riot act to him, and he turned around and said, no, I can't take your money, and I'm not going to. At that point, he says he wants a Doge style audit. He wants to know where all this other money is coming from and from who and what the price tag is, because he's not the kind of individual that is going to be controlled to that extent. Now, the other problem that we have with Charlie Kirk that has only been asked, as far as I can tell, Greg, in the last couple of days by, what's his name? Zach DeGiorgio on Wolves and Finance, is finally someone has said all along what I thought the very first time I heard Charlie Kirk say Shabbat Shalom, and that is, who was he really? Was he the innocent that he's made out to be, or did he know some things to start with? And I think he knew things to start with. You don't make the Faustian bargain without knowing that you're dealing with the devil. I mean, how can you not? So, yeah, I think he had to have some inkling from the start that, yeah, he's out there doing all these neat things on college campuses, and he's in bed with powers that are manipulating him, and he's willing to play along up to a certain point. That's the problem you always get with these kinds of things. So, yeah, I happen to agree. What I'm most interested in now is there's all of this stuff about Epstein out there. And this is occurring at the same time you have this new, fresh organization that's conservative and so on emerge on the scenes. I want to know what the connections are, because I'll tell you what my suspicion is, Greg, and both of you probably already had that suspicion. How much was that organization being used for money laundering?
Yep.
From all of those types of activities. That's what I really want to know. Because there's a little hint of that, even in this absurd narrative with this Tyler Robinson character. And I'm sorry, folks. I can look at the guy and tell you this guy is not capable of planning anything even remotely like what the narrative says he's planning. No way.
I agree with you. I mean, Michael's, if I were to give you one of my lawn rifles, and I said to you, I want you to go up on top of a roof and fire the weapon and get away without anyone seeing you, do you think you'd be capable of doing that?
No.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you.
You don't have to shoot anybody. You just have to fire the weapon.
Let me ask you.
Well, then maybe I'll fire it up in the air.
Let me ask you another one, Chris. Do you think he would be capable of stashing a 30-06 rifle in such a fashion that the FBI dogs can't find it immediately?
Right. Disassemble it, reassemble it, change
disassemble
clothes,
it, reassemble it, disassemble it.
I mean, that story was such utter BS from day one that I refused to believe it.
Okay, question number 2, Chris. Do we believe the same FBI that is able to find Charlie Kirk's murderer within, let's say, 48, 72 hours, whatever the amount of time, short amount of time, after the Charlie Kirk murder, cannot find the missing mother with the pacemaker of a news talk show host after 3 weeks, or whatever absurd amount of time it's been? This is the same FBI. Who are we supposed to believe? Are they incompetent, or are they really good at what they do?
Wait,
Keystone Cash is on the case.
Bingo. Keystone Cash.
We got to talk about Guthrie if we're going to talk about Epstein in this entire thing, because she ties into this entire conversation.
Of course she does.
One more thing. This is something that I see, and it I believe it has some kind of a cult tie to it.
Okay.
And that is, whenever somebody is about to be famous or about to get a lot of cash, there always seems to be somebody within their immediate family that dies. You can look at basketball players, you can look at hip-hop artists, you can look at Miss Erica Kirk, because I truly believe she was the brains behind all of this. You can look at people like Joseph Biden, where his first wife dies, and then he has a meteoric rise. And I'll also throw in Mr. Mazie.
You're bringing a tear to his eye.
What's that?
You're bringing a tear to Joseph's eye.
Yeah, right. When I see this,
I'm grieving.
Yeah, right. I do not see at all Charlie Kirk as the brains behind anything. I see him as a useful stooge. He may have been having some kind of conversation. He may have had some kind of intelligence or connected some amount of dots above the normal human, right? But I see Erica Kirk behind all of this. I mean, why the ties to, orphanages in Romania? By the way, same place as Mr. Tate, right? The Ubermensch of the Conservative Party. What? I'm not saying there's anything definitive, but I am saying there are some curious ties to all of this.
I don't know if you've been following Candace Owens' Bride of Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
She lost last week.
Just writing novels over there on her podcast.
She is absolutely shredding the biography and pointing out so many anomalous patterns in her background that I would have to agree with you that if there is, of all the people that we've seen paraded before us in connection with Charlie Kirk's murder, the one that stands out as being a real piece of work is her.
I mean, leather pants.
She shows up in a CIA video from years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2 days after the assassination, she's on Zoom calls talking about the amount of merch she sold.
With sparklers.
Well, at the funeral, they got fireworks going off as she's coming out. Fireworks, like, come on, it's ridiculous. And she reminds me of something Donald Trump always says that I think is more insidious than anything. Donald Trump has a favorite phrase. He goes, straight out of central casting.
Yeah.
She is straight out of central casting.
Yeah.
And I actually believe when Donald Trump says that, there is something to be paid attention to. It's not just, that's a good looking man, good looking woman. It's literally, no. These people were casted into their roles centrally, central intelligence, alphabet agencies. And he's telling you, and Michaels, I would disagree with the Charlie Kirk point about him being, maybe a minor player in the sense of he didn't know. If you read the text messages, there's a naivety between him and others. He's texting like you and I would text one another, Michaels, about what he's finding. No, he is.
Yeah.
It's very jovial.
There is a certain naivete about the man that I think he was intelligent, and I don't think that I think he understood to a degree of what he was getting into, but not the depth of it.
Correct.
That's where I think that we're all going with this. But the other thing that's really interesting is the shift. There has been a sea change shift in pretty much the whole narrative because of the Kirk assassination. And Chris and I talked about this. I want to see what you think about this, Greg. And that is, I don't think that they planned for the Kirk assassination thing to still be a topic of discussion in the alternative media. And the other thing I don't think that they expected to get out of it was a sudden explosion of it's okay now to talk about Evangelo-Zionism and Israeli foreign policy if you're people like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, because that is a direct blowback that occurred as a result of the Kirk assassination. What do you think about that?
So when I saw the Kirk assassination, the first thing that I was thinking is this just solidifies J.D. Vance in 4 more years. Well, 3 more years. That it is almost them striking just like they did after Butler. It was striking into the opportunistic framing of a death and using people's moral values that currently are lacking in this country. And I can prove that because this might be unpopular with people that, took a side with TPUSA, but I need to say it. If we go back to the Super Bowl halftime show, this does tie. It's really important. Bad Bunny. What did we see and hear before Bad Bunny performed with TPUSA? Well, we're going to have a wholesome show or a Christian show. We're going to counter what Bad Bunny is going to be doing at the Super Bowl. He's not going to be American. It's going to be sung in Spanish. It's not going to celebrate America. And I'm over here going, wait a minute, my wife's Puerto Rican. And while we don't understand a darn word that Bad Bunny says, nor that we listen to his music, I'm not willing to paint the guy quite like that quite yet. Let's see what happens. And so I watched both halftime shows. And what I saw was actually ironic. I had one side, TPUSA, telling me that what I was about to watch was going to be demonic. It was going to be splitting the country. The only people that were splitting the country was TPUSA. Bad Bunny came out and said, I love America. Here's all the Spanish cultures that live in America. Was there dancing that was sexual in nature? Absolutely. Find me a Super Bowl show that doesn't have a little bit of smut put into it. Okay.
Right.
I understand a word that he said? No. Did I find it ironic that people said English is the official language of America? If he doesn't speak it, he shouldn't be performing. Yeah, I do, because guess what? Spanish is being spoken more and more throughout this country, whether you like it or not. It's a reality, and they are American. There's people here legally that speak Spanish. So what's that have to do with your initial question? Well, TPUSA seems to have striked while the iron was hot into creating more division, but doing so under the false pretense of what Christ wants, of what God wants for a Christian nation. And that to me is a hijacking of biblical scripture in a spot where there is a void of scripture and a void of God that's improper. It is not valid theology, and it's dangerous to our nation, and it's dangerous to what the new morals will be leading forward for this agenda.
It's evangelo-Zionism again.
Correct.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. They are interestingly enough, they are making a bid, I think, to become the anointed spokesman or the anointed institution for that stream of evangelicalism. That's what they're making the pitch to be. And so far they've been largely successful, but at the cost of raising the issue itself. And the other thing that's happening, interestingly enough, and I think this is very deliberate, it's splitting, so to speak, the Christian influence or Christian vote. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Because if you're a traditionalist curmudgeon like yours truly, you have literally no organization or no political representation at all. Mm-hmm. There's nothing there. I can't crawl into any political alliance or anything of that sort with the likes of Mike Huckabee and people like that, because I'm not part of their belief system, nor are they of mine. And yet he's not a sound theologian. Well, yeah, this is my point. That theology has taken over evangelicalism in this country, and if you're an Archbishop Lefebvre, to pull somebody out of thin air, you have no one to speak for you politically. So this is the thing that alarms me about where the country is headed, just by looking at TPUSA and what has happened in the wake of Charlie Kirk and his murder. It's somehow there's a connection here, and I don't know where it's all going to go. I do think there are aspects of Turning Point USA that are beginning to unravel. So, what they're going to replace it with, we'll see.
If Charlie Kirk was still alive, there would never be an alternative Super Bowl halftime show. No. And again, people might get caught up in the fact that I keep going back to the Super Bowl halftime show. That is an allegory, so to speak, for the overall ills and misdirection of this organization. The other thing that I think is happening from this is, I didn't hear. Okay, so there's a movement with like the Nick Fuentes and these different people, the Groyper movement, that would blaming Israel for failed policy of the United States and distracting. I actually feel like after Charlie Kirk's assassination and Candace Owens and what she's saying, people are more open to having a conversation, not about what Jewish people as a religion are doing, but the Jewish state, so to speak, of Israel, of what they're doing in influence. And that was a taboo conversation just a few years ago. And now it's out in the open. Now they're still trying to label it anti-Semitic. God forbid you say something, because they try to attach it as if you're attacking an entire religion of people. And that's not what you're doing. You're talking about state solutions. But if there's a blowback that's happened, that I think is good. Yeah. This is exposing one of those money networks.
That's the chief thing. Chris and I, again, were talking before you arrived on the recording.
God, you guys covered a lot before I got here.
We did. We really did, because this to me is one of the chief things that has been the blowback from Kirk's assassination. It has now made it acceptable to be able to talk about. They're trying to shut the conversation down and say, no, if you talk like that, you're anti-Semitic. I don't think they're going to have a shred of success in doing that.
Right.
They certainly haven't shut up Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, Ian Carroll, Dave Hodges. They're not going to shut me up, and so on by that tactic. It's just not going to happen.
Well, there was a story in Minnesota with these Somalis and the fraud and the money. And I turned to my wife, I said, when will somebody do Jackson, New Jersey, Lakewood, New Jersey? When will somebody actually talk about the Hasidic community? And the Hasidic Jews have taken taxpayer money and they've created their own shopping centers to the point where I went to a ShopRite and I got dirty looks and I was told I wasn't welcome there.
Yep.
My wife's family used to live in this area. And I was like, oh, sorry. Okay. I'm hopping back in my car. I thought it was a free country. I thought I was allowed to go anywhere. They have their own police force in order to tell you that you're trespassing if they tell you to leave, and they could just be because you are not a Hasidic Jew. But if you look at what they're doing with buying up the housing, it's almost like BlackRock, the model, and they're using taxpayer dollars. They got multiple families living places, but claiming that they're churches, so that way they don't have to pay property tax.
Yep.
And they've taken over almost the entire county of Lakewood, that community, almost the entire area of Jackson at this point in time. Schools are being decimated. No one's talking about these loopholes. And the reason they don't do it is because the one person just recently did it, the first person they own, like, you're an anti-Semitic.
Yep.
And I'm going, wait a minute, can't we talk about fraud? I don't care who's doing it, what group is doing it. If you are taking advantage of the American taxpayer, this should be something that we should be talking about. Yeah. You don't get, because of your classification, you don't get a free pass to defraud people.
And they removed his Patreon.
Yes. Yeah, Patreon nuked
reporting
his page.
about this.
Yes.
And this is something that I've been bringing up on my own show, is that they are desperately trying to silence anything and control the narrative before the midterm elections.
Oh, yes.
Because this thing has a really good chance of going completely sideways about everything, okay?
Yes.
And the problem is that you cannot have somebody like Toilet Paper USA talking about how there could be corruption here. And I think part of TPUSA right now is meant to splinter the Christian vote.
Oh,
they felt as though probably
yes.
that Charlie Kirk had too much power and too much control over a block of voters.
Yes.
So they had to splinter that.
Yeah.
And I also think they're trying to destroy MAGA too. I think they're trying to sit there and say, well, if you're MAGA, then you're MEGA. Then you're automatically, Israel first. Laura Loomer over the weekend was one of the most bloodthirsty degenerates I have ever read. I mean, it was nauseating. And there was this mass shooter over the weekend. I think 16 people were killed, right?
Yep.
And Laura Loomer made this childish argument that this Muslim shooter followed Tucker Carlson. So now Tucker Carlson is being branded as a Muslim terrorist dog whistle. And he needs to be ostracized. He should not be able to talk to the White House, and he should not be on any social media platforms just because this maniac followed Tucker Carlson. This is what we're up against. It has, if you so deviate or criticize this movement, that's it. You're silenced.
Let's talk about what we're up against, Joseph. Okay. Now, I know that you're not as much of a social media user as Michael's and myself. I mean,
not since I lost my Facebook account.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you have your X account and stuff, but like, I know your website, the Giza Death Star website is where
my website is it.
Yeah, exactly. But let's just call it what it is. I recently wrote that social media has become a slavery system.
Yes.
That people at this point in time have given up their autonomy to think, because what's popping up on their news feeds is pig slop like Laura Loomer. When that's what's the top thing that got Chris Michael's attention with that story, and then Tucker Carlson's there, and you only get a couple names coming to the surface, that tells me everything's been curated by the people at X, the people at Facebook, whether it's Zuckerberg, Musk, whatever these new type of slave owners might be. They're just bringing you back onto the ranch in order to farm you for engagement. So that way they can sell dollars in order to be able to reinvest into their pet projects, which, granted, are against your rights.
Yes.
As we would normally understand them. So I'm at the point right now where I just stopped paying X. Screw Elon Musk. Screw X. I've pulled the curtain behind Facebook. Facebook was funny because they're like, hey, if you get 20,000 more views on a post before tomorrow, we'll give you $30 extra. And I'm laughing going, people are hooked to the system. They're slaves to it. And how is that maybe... I love when Joseph gives us stories. How could the slavery system of controlling people go back to something we could learn from the past where this happened in past civilizations and it's playing out again. Story time with Joseph. I know he can call it something.
I don't know about past civilizations, but I'll tell you what I think part of the problem is, and it occurred to me as kind of an accident as a result of my experience with losing my Facebook account, which was not my doing. I wasn't setting out to lose it. Their stupid artificial intelligence wouldn't recognize my face as the owner of the account. When I told the stupid artificial intelligence, go look at the pictures of me on my wall, it's me.
Did you have your hat on? Maybe it was looking for the hat.
Oh, I don't know if I had my hat on or not. I've got so many hats around here. I lose. This is my new one, by the way. But
I know.
anyway,
I didn't recognize that one.
Yeah, it's my fedora. Somebody said you got to have a fedora, so I broke down and bought one. But anyway, as a result of losing my Facebook account, I stayed in touch with members of my family and most of my friends that way. So I had literally to type letters and sign letters and mail them through snail mail to my family members and some of my friends saying, hey, I've lost my Facebook account. You're going to have to communicate to me this way or through email. And I was taking Shiloh out just last night, as a matter of fact, outside. And I was thinking, why don't we write letters to people anymore? And I thought, that's interesting. I think I'm going to start doing that and just writing a letter, maybe doing a kind of a newsletter. This is what I'm up to, folks. Here I am. This is the weather. Here I am doing this. There I am doing that. And screw Facebook. Or any of these other social media platforms. Give them a nice text, a nice lengthy text that they can read and set aside or burn or whatever they want to do with it. I miss the social interaction I have with people. We're able to do it face to face here, but I also was stopping to think, when was the last time I went to a coffee house and just sat down and was around other human beings? Well, thank you, Starbucks. You took that away from us. We're in for the quick coffee and pay through the nose for it, and out we go. We don't sit and read the paper, have a book, have a smoke. We can't smoke. God perish the thought. So yeah, we need to restore all of this and get ourselves, I mean this sincerely, get ourselves out of this digital frame of mind all the time. For the first time, I have a friend coming over in a couple of weeks that wanted to see me and talk about something face to face. I said, sure, come on over. The last time I did that wasn't a holiday. I can't think of how far back it was, Greg. That it's not a holiday. It's not my birthday. It's not anybody else's birthday. Just to get together to talk about something important. I can't remember when that happened. And when I grew up, that was the way people interacted with each other all the time on a constant daily basis. So yeah, I'm on this. I think I'm going to be on this increasing anti-digital kick in the future. I cut my internet back to the point that I don't get online at all unless I'm checking email or doing interviews. I used to be on all the time. I'm not anymore. I don't do it. I just don't do it.
Right.
And that's going to increase. I
agree with you. I mean, the concept of a porch, where did that go? Right? People coming over and sitting and jawboning, making snide remarks at one another, or sarcasm for that matter.
Yeah.
I really miss the days of sarcasm.
Yeah.
It doesn't get picked up.
Listen, Chris, I had friends. Here comes the story. My parents had friends in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, that actually lived in a little bungalow house. I know exactly where it is. I could tell you the address. I'm not going to. But if you go to Sioux Falls, you can see this house. It was a little bungalow that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and it was a cute little bungalow. It wasn't one of his ugly modernist monstrosities with a house over a creek, all this nonsense. It's just a little nice bungalow house, but it had this wide, big, huge porch with these big porch swings on it, and I love those. And they would sit out there on that porch, my parents and their friends, on those porch swings and talk about things before they went into the kitchen to play cards. And I miss that. Where I'm at, my neighbors across the street have 2 little girls, and sometimes I see them outside playing, but it reminds me of how little we see children outside playing, and really playing and not doing this.
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember when I was a kid, you had to be home by sunset, and there was no tracking device.
No.
Right? And
No.
if you were in trouble and they wanted you home, guess what you heard? You heard your mother bellowing for miles.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to get your dumbass home.
Yeah, my mother had a whistle. She could whistle real loud through her teeth. And when she wanted me to come home, she went out on the porch and she whistled, and you could hear her whistle all through. There's Mrs. Farrell. She's summoning the kid home,
Yeah.
But yeah, I miss that too. I had to be home when the street lights came on. When they came on, that was my signal, go home.
I think this has something to do that can trail back to COVID, maybe slightly before.
Yep.
And that is to remove interaction, because I think at this point it's been scientifically proven that you're within an electromagnetic field when you're around other people. You're able to pick up on other notions, thoughts, emotions, whatever it is, and they want that removed. And I also think, the dark esoteric in me, I also think 5G, 6G, satellites, cell towers, I think that's also part of it. And this electromagnetic soup is truly made to remove us from the divine.
I agree. Have you read Arthur Firstenberg's The Invisible Rainbow?
Heard of it, but no.
You need to read it. Put that on your list. You need to read it. I gave that book away as Christmas presents one year.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, it is quite a read, let me tell you. And I'm going to give just a little bit of the plot away. One of the things he points out is that with every new electromagnetic technology emergence that's adopted en masse, there have been outbreaks of sicknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Spanish flu.
Yep. Bingo.
And oddly enough, I am not too far away from the location that Marconi broadcast for the first time, and his message was received on a ship. Nor am I that far away from where all of the Spanish flu victims were quarantined on Montauk, Long Island, all the way by Camp Hero, Stranger Things Season 1.
Yeah. Well, no, I can believe it.
All those wonderful correlations, right?
Well, yes. Allowing for Marconi's utterly fallacious claim that he was the first to invent radio. We all know the Tesla.
Nikola Tesla.
Story. Yes.
Right.
But anyway.
Greg,
I teach that in my class.
About an hour, 50 minutes in. I know we'd like to go all over the place with Joseph, but I don't know about you, but I'd like to get into more, maybe some scientific oddities. We've had some scientists be polished off or go missing lately. We've got Trump saying, well, we're going to see UFOs and UAPs soon.
Yeah, I wanted to go there with frequency. We had talked about last time.
Mr. Farrell in the back. You had a question.
While you guys decide where you want to go, can I? My little pooch is down here.
Yeah, let him out.
Same here. I
don't let her out. I take her out. So can I take her out and come back in a few minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll pause here and we'll come back.
All right. I'll be right back too. I got to take Mega out.
Sounds good. I'm going to get my dog then, and we'll make it a date. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. We're all back from sabbatical. I had to go iron my shoelaces. Dr. Joseph Farrell also had to walk his dog. And we've got four-footed producers on all ends. Greg has a dog. I have a dog. Joseph has a dog. So we need to take care of them just as much.
Yep.
And now Greg has a topic that he would like to broach with Mr. Farrell. And I am ecstatic. Why? Because I'm not happy until other people aren't happy. And I really, really, really want to see Joseph Farrell completely obliterate Greg. So, Greg, what were you discussing before about classical music and frequencies?
Yes. So, Michael,
this is almost as bad as Tartaria and me. I have done
it is almost
shows.
that bad, yes. And
have
Flat
done whole
Earth.
shows.
And Flat Earth.
On the retartarians and their idiocy and how they don't know how to perform a Google search. Now, you go ahead.
Okay. So I'm gonna bring some science into this, and I'm gonna bring some actual science into this. So one of the things that I've been fascinated about is I had a person on the show a couple of years ago who told me that he's out in Seattle. He's doing this testing with frequency in order to break up cancer cells, and they were closing on human clinical trials. I probably should follow up with him because he's probably in human trials at this point, because that was like 3 years ago. But frequency is very important. We can see that frequency brings matter together. It can destroy matter depending on how we're using it. My question is, last conversation we ended saying, hey, we're going to talk about music a little bit. I personally took classes in Baroque music, classical music in college. I sang in the Schola Cantorum. I like Bach. I like Mozart. I like Handel. And I was thinking about frequencies and rhythms in this music. And I know, Joseph, you really like the organ, and I can see his eyes right now, Michael's. He's ready to tear me apart because he knows where this is going.
I know. I can't wait.
When you get to the Baroque music, I was telling Joseph during the break, it's structured closer to heart rate rhythm. So you would expect maybe it might lower your cortisol. When you get to the classical period, there's melodies, very balanced phrasing that would probably help out the parasympathetic nervous system in order to be able to follow the melody. And there has been scientific studies that show that listening to things like Mozart, the Mozart effect, science has shown that short-term spatial reasoning improves after listening to Mozart. So they say, listen to Mozart and study for your whatever type test you have to take. People's moods improve. Now, where things get controversial, and I know this, that's why I wanted to ask them. When I have these guitars on my back wall, the modern day tuning is 440 hertz. The way things used to be tuned.
To what note?
Okay, that's great. To A. Today to A is 440 hertz.
To the A above middle C.
That's correct, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to get you on record. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Joseph, are you impressed at least that I knew it was to A and I didn't just pick a note out of my rear end?
I'm quite impressed. That's a lot better than most people know. But go ahead.
So standard tuning today, Michaels, is an A, 440 hertz.
Just to let people know, I have heard this thousands of times.
I should stop, cut my
No,
losses.
you shouldn't. You've dug this hole.
No. You started out into this.
I did. I'm sticking with
field, and I'm willing to more than willing, and happy to
help me step on each mine.
Walk through the mine. I will sit over here in my free field.
Of 440 hertz.
432, 440, 492, whatever you want to tune your A2 is fine by me.
So some musicians claim that tuning the 432 is more of a natural tuning.
Why?
That the music sounds different to them. Why? Because, if you go back to the time period, the music would have been tuned closer to the 432.
By whom?
By the musicians that were playing back then.
Oh, you mean like the famous German organ builder Arp Schnicker, who tuned all of his organs to A492?
See, Michaels, there we go.
Whoops.
So I was talking about stringed instruments, but keep going. Yeah, I like this.
I'm talking about where the instruments where you can't stop and don't have the ability to control microtones like you do on stringed instruments. So why 432, 440, or 492? Well, keyboard instruments have a lot to do with it. Number two, the Industrial Revolution has a lot to do with it. Number three, the modern oboe has a lot to do with it. Because why? On the modern oboe that you hear giving out the note A at the beginning of every orchestra tuning session, what's the frequency? Well, it gives out the tune or the frequency of A440. And with the Industrial Revolution, you had a bunch of industrialists mass producing instruments, and they thought, okay, A440, everybody go with that, and so we'll all be in tune. Okay, now, where I'm just going to cut through all the bilge water that associates this with Rockefeller and all the evil plots to get people to listen to A440. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. I can point out to you a well-known Bach organ cantata and have you listen to 3 different performances of it by 3 different organists on 3 different instruments that are tuned to different A. And as a result, let's just take 432A and 440A. Do you know what 432 does? Nothing other than step the note A down about
slightly flatter.
About 1/2 step. Right. So that if you're listening to A, the key of A in 440, you're listening to A. And if you listen to the key of A in 432, you're listening to A flat.
A flat.
That's all it does. If you listen to A492, it steps it from the key of A440 up to the key of B492. That's all it does. So there is a problem here for all you conspiracy theorists that think that listening to 440 is going to be somehow unnatural, because no matter what you do, at some point you're going to come across that frequency of 440. In A432, it's going to be when you're playing around in the key of B flat. In the A, you follow my point?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
You're not getting away from the magical frequency of 440 or 432 or 492 in any of these systems.
So I appreciate. I agree. I actually wasn't going with a conspiracy theory whatsoever when I said that. I was actually going. I was actually going
somewhere else.
I was going musically and elsewhere into frequencies.
Yes.
And I just got to ask, because I asked you about something else. Mm-hmm. I mentioned Smashing Pumpkins. Billy Corgan would pick his guitar colors, saying it would make the guitars sound different.
Yes.
And you said, well, that I could agree with. That threw me off, because I always thought that was like a bat crap crazy
no
expression.
No. Why is the wood of a Guarnerius or Stradivarius different from the modern wood they make to make modern violins? Why?
It's density, right?
It's density. It's
the
mold.
Age, the resonance. Yep.
Mold. A lot of factors contribute to it. There was a doctrine, what you're getting at, there was a doctrine in the 18th century that is not taught anymore. So regardless of what modern you're dealing with, including the so-called period performance people, very seldom are you going to be dealing with people that are going to interpret that music from the doctrine of that time. It was a doctrine called Affektenlehre. Have you ever heard the term?
No, I haven't.
It means the doctrine of the affections. You can go on my website, Greg, in the members area. And if you don't have access to my members area, I will send you the links, because I did 2 little talks at Bruno about Affektenlehre and in terms of the music of Dietrich Buxtehude and then J.S. Bach. What Affektenlehre is and it's a different cosmology of music, and for that matter, aesthetics in general. Totally different than the cosmology that obtains after the end of the 19th century. Mm-hmm. The best way to put it is, in the Romantic era, what is art? Art becomes self-expression. Okay, more or less.
Sure.
So that by the end of the 19th century in music, what do you have? Well, you have the quest for absolute originality, and you end up with Arnold Schoenberg and cacophonous, god-awful modernist ugliness, okay?
Right.
The key point in that, by the way, here's a good little book for you, Dionysus Rising. It's by a traditional Roman Catholic author, E. Michael Jones. Subtitle is The Birth of Cultural Revolution Out of the Spirit of Music. And it's all about what happens in the 19th century and its aesthetic as it applies to music. So let's go back to the 18th century. When Beethoven writes the Pastoral Symphony, he writes it in the key of F. Why? Because according to the doctrine of Affektenlehre, the key of F major was a pastoral key. Okay, so what Affektenlehre is it says that there are certain gestures, musical figurations that should mirror a text, so that you actually hear, let's say in J.S. Bach's setting of the Magnificat, deposuit de sede, deposuit potentis de sede, who deposes the mighty from their seat. Well, you actually hear in the music, you hear the deposing, you hear the sitting, you hear the jumping, you hear the skipping in the musical figuration itself. So the figurations are sort of like musical rhetorical gestures that are designed to conjure or convey or invoke a specific concept or a specific passion. So in other words, cosmologically, this music is not, hear me now, folks, this music is not ultimately about self-expression. It's about communicating via a language, by a system of gestures that everybody assumes everybody else knows. And the genius in that music then becomes how you use that tradition in a very unique way that is still part of that tradition. The other thing that is part of the Baroque, and the reason why I think that it's the highest form of music that there is, bar none, is that whole aesthetic is coming out of a distinctly, definitely, deliberately Christian worldview. Why? Because harmony represents the natural. It represents the collective. The individual lines of melody represent the individual, person and nature. And it's interesting that in that system, you have more than one independent line of music able to exist in harmony with others. Communio sanctorum. There's a reason that Johann Sebastian Bach, who wrote the most complex counterpoint, is a Christian. It's coming out of a cosmology. When that cosmology begins to deteriorate, you see the beginning of other styles of music. Now, by the way, let's observe that Haydn, Mozart, Handel, Scarlatti, Vivaldi, Corelli, you name it, they are all part of this universe of Affektenlehre. The one who begins the shift into self-expression is Ludwig Beethoven. And it happens right at the time that he's passing from his middle period, 5th and 6th symphonies, on into the 7th and 8th and 9th. And within a few short years of Beethoven's death, what happens? You get the one thing harmonically that every music theory history will take you to and point out to you the significance of what just happened. You have Wagner's prelude to Tristan and Isolde and the so-called Tristan chord, those opening 4 bars of the prelude to Tristan and Isolde, which are in unresolved diminished sevenths. And if you watch Bernstein's analysis of those 4 bars in his Harvard Norton lectures, you will also not hear a diminished 7th chord that is never sounded, that hovers over the whole structure of those opening 4 measures. So in other words, at that point, you're in the world of artistic self-expression. By the end, and that occurs right in the middle of the 19th century, by the end of it, what do you have? You have Arnold Schoenberg and his absolute original tone row serial music of Thomas Mann's Dr. Faustus. What is the bargain the devil makes to that composer? I can offer you one time only absolute unique originality. And it's true. It's so original, nobody else has done it before, and it's so ugly, no one else wants to do it ever after. Yeah. I mean, go listen to that music.
I'm familiar through Wagner, because I know he took Beethoven's sound and kind of expanded upon it, made like some twists to where Beethoven would have went, and then he kind of moved his tonality into a completely different ground, so to speak. I remember my professor in college stating basically that Wagner was like the philosopher of music, where Beethoven was the founder of the music that Wagner wanted to kind of study and go. And so he would stage it, so to speak, and bring his philosophy.
No, this is where I would disagree with most. You're listening to most modern American Academy presentations of music. Real progress begins in the 19th century. Bull roar. The real progress is everything up to the 19th century, and the devolution started in the 19th century. The real philosopher of music, if you want to get right down to it, is either J.S. Bach or his son, Carl Philipp Emanuel. Carl Philipp Emanuel actually wrote a treatise. You got to read it sometime, because it will be a shock to you how different it is from what you have been taught as music theory. And it's coming out of a very, very different aesthetic cosmology than modern music. There is a difference.
Okay.
This is why I'm not no aspersions here on rock music. I'm not saying that, but I will never be a rocker, because it's coming out of a cosmology and a philosophy of aesthetics that I simply don't subscribe to. Now, is that cosmology of the Effektenlehre capable of embracing music like that? Yes. Because that's one of the other purposes of music, is to refresh the soul. It can do that. But the ultimate purpose is what? The glory of God. Because music is a cosmology in action. So there is all the difference in the world between even a Beethoven and a Haydn. You know,
so if I find a mountain and we create like a new Mount Rushmore, but we'll call it Mount Bach, all right, or we'll call it Mount Farrell, and you get to put the four composers from this time period on there. Only four.
That's easy.
Who are you putting?
I'm putting Johann Sebastian Bach, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. It would be a difficult toss-up for me between Mozart and Haydn.
Okay.
Haydn is not as appreciated as he should be, but he is a master at Effektenlehre and at the musical gesture and the musical symbolism. There are two famous choruses from his oratorio, The Creation. If you've never heard The Creation, you need to listen to it. There's one chorus on Psalm 19:1, Die Himmel erzählen die Ehre Gottes, the heavens are telling the glory of God. Okay? His setting of that particular psalm is very interesting, because there's a trio in it. Why a trio? And by the way, the trio is of the three archangels, Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael. Why those three? So in other words, this is not happenstance that these people are doing this. They're not just strumming away with their guitars in their garage and thinking, "Oh, that sounds cool."
I feel like that's personally attacking me, Michaels.
I'm attacking the whole culture. I'm attacking the whole culture because it doesn't put thought and craft into what they're doing.
Right.
So they're literally stuck trying to reinvent everything that was already invented, and they're not even doing a good job of that.
So it's
All
almost like music is divine.
Of course it is. The
Yes, it
harmony,
is.
the music of the spheres. What is all that about? It's
Right.
about the God-given natural harmonic order. So for these composers, what they're doing is that as above, so below philosophy. What they're trying to do is mimic that grand music of the cosmos.
Okay. So now let's connect this to where I know Michaels wants to go and where I was kind of setting this up for. Frequency, all right, and connecting us to what is it that makes us connect that with God or with a different dimensional type of feeling that enables us to connect spiritually with our higher power. We're in a time period where there are conversations about people invoking spirits through computers. We've had people say that disclosure is coming. Right before this stupid thing happened with Iran, we finally heard that we were going to get disclosure from the Department of, and all of a sudden, oops, we got to drop some missiles. We'll get back to that later on. Michaels.
That's about right.
Yeah. Michaels, do you see where I'm connecting? If music is part of the divine, part of the spirit, what part of it, of the musical experience, is the spiritual part? Is it frequency? Is it something about the harmonies that calls us to our sensibilities? Is it Trinitarian in a way that it hits our senses? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking, and maybe that can get us into the disclosure conversation, because I think
You're asking me, or you're asking Chris?
I'm asking both you guys to weigh in.
Go,
Chris. Do you want to go first?
I'll give the amateur answer. Yes, I do believe that frequencies do in fact resonate. Right? If you hear a certain thing, then it makes you feel all nice and warm on the inside. If you hear death metal, it makes you feel icky. So I think it can actually go down to genetics, and also I kind of lean in the direction of Christian Friedrich Daniel Schubert, where he says things like D minor, A minor, E minor, they have feminine tones, because I think
that's coming out of Effektenlehre.
There you go. So I do, and being a former violinist, I do think that this stuff matters, because I also believe that there is a bastardization of music.
Oh, yeah.
Ever since, like Joseph Farrell said, about the mid 1800s or so, because as far as I know, music, architecture, notes, tones, scales, they have a masculine and they have a feminine.
Yes.
And all of that is coming into play with modern music, with modern art, architecture. Like, just look at the architecture from Art Nouveau to now. I'd rather live in an Art Nouveau style village than a glass cube.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's just how I think. So do I think frequency and tone and actual shapes, do I think shapes have a frequency and resonate on a genetic level? The short answer, yes.
Yes. All right. My answer. All the above, plus the craft and ingenuity of the composer in using the toolbox of that Effektenlehre, the sheer creativity of listening to that little 6 minutes of the Gloria from the Lutheran masses that J.S. Bach wrote. And yeah, that's what he called them. The little Gloria from the 232, that you hear the text painted very deliberately. You hear the numerical symbolisms built into the score, and there's so much of it that it cannot be coincidental. That's the point. This was all deliberate. Or listening to Handel, you can hear the hailstones slamming down on Egypt. You can hear it because it's in the score. And it's not there as a special effect. It's there as part of the cosmology. There's a difference. It's all, if I can put it this way, it's all cold calculation in the name of the deepest emotional experience. That's quite a whopper. It's not it's not the opposition of one to the other. It's the ability to hear that universal counterpoint in the Hosanna of the J.S. Bach B minor Mass. And it's wheeling, it's dance through so many key changes to end right back up where it began, and do so with order and with joy. So it's built into the music. It's an objective quality to the music that is not reproducible in the styles that follow it, because those styles are reflective of a changing cosmology. That's my point. That's my point. There's a reason that on so many manuscripts of J.S. Bach, you'll find the letters JJ. You know what they stand for? Latin, Jesu juvat, Jesus help. And at the end of those manuscripts, you'll find 3 other letters, SDG. You know what they stand for? Latin again, Soli Deo Gloria. So in other words, this is not just the guy's piety. This is his faith. This is his cosmology. You don't understand Bach or C.P.E. Bach or Joseph Haydn or Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart without understanding that religio-cultural world in which they composed. Mozart may seem like an odd one in that group, but he's not. Not at all. If there's any odd person in that group, it's who? It's Beethoven. Beethoven couldn't write a decent piece of organ music if his life depended on it. And by the way, all those other composers knew how to play the king of instruments. If you can't make music with the deadest, most mechanical instrument that there is, you don't know how to do it.
Right. Yeah, I just was thinking as you were talking about that. I was up in New York City on New Year's Day, and we made ourselves over to St. Patrick's. And I just wanted my children to see the inside of the church, but I got in there and I just felt this sadness too, because I don't think I appreciated what I had when I was younger. I got to perform in the choir lofts, Bach's Mass in B minor. And I actually had a solo that I sang during that. And I'm looking up at the loft, and everything's changed now, I guess, with terrorism. They have everything closed off. But I think back to freshman or sophomore year of college, getting to perform that and learn that. And I guess hearing you talk, I kind of really just, it hit me. I was like, it was a prayer.
Yes.
Rehearsing that.
Of course.
We were in prayer. Yeah. And I don't think I appreciated that in hindsight. As I was rehearsing it, I got to hit that note. Oh my God, the mental gymnastics of hearing what the altos, the sopranos are doing. Tenor twos are here. I'm over here as a tenor one. What am I doing next? But the prayer when we performed, I'd love to be able to go back with the age that I am now and talk to my 19-year-old, 20-year-old self, be like, you idiot, pay attention.
The marvel about Sebastian Bach's music is, and you'll find this happens quite often. For example, the harpsichord concerto in D minor for one solo harpsichord. That whole concerto is nothing but a recasting of music that was written for some of his sacred cantatas. Okay. So very often you'll find him moving effortlessly between an ecclesiastical and a secular context, and the style is exactly the same. And there's a reason for that. And again, it's not happenstance. It's not because he was running out of ideas. It's not because he was in a hurry to meet a deadline, right, although that often played a part. But it was because the cosmology said that everything that he, particularly for a Lutheran like he was, everything was part of this vocation and offering to God. This is Protestant work ethic. There's no holy work and there's no secular or ungodly work. All work is sacred and should be approached that way. So his music has that characteristic You even in his secular son Carl Philipp Emanuel, you can still hear it. It's still ringing in the background. It's certainly present in Handel. Haydn is full of it. So yeah, this is all part of coming out of that cosmology. And you mentioned Schubert. There's a guy hanging on for dear life to that whole 18th century cosmology because it's informing his music. Absolutely. Feminine keys. Again, that little talk on effect and lyre I did on my website, I point out that, yeah, D minor in the thinking of that era and in the thinking of that cosmology was a feminine key. So what is the toccata in D minor trying to tell you? Why are
I don't know.
It's trying to tell you a lot. What are those scales? What's that scale? What's the
I have
scale?
to brush up.
Okay. Scale is scalum in Latin.
Oh, okay.
Scalum means what?
Once again, I got to brush up on my Latin.
A ladder or a scale, like a musical scale. So the scale to a 18th century Lutheran is what? It's Jacob's ladder.
Yes.
Mm.
It's Jacob's ladder.
Wow.
What's Jacob's ladder in the church fathers, which the Lutherans really knew well? Well, it's a symbol or a type of the incarnation. So in other words, that whole D minor toccata that everyone is so familiar with, it's a little musical version of the Magnificat. And by the way, J.S. Bach is not the only one playing around with D minor in that sense. The guy that really gets cranking with it is his predecessor by the name of Dietrich Buxtehude. So yeah, these guys are coldly calculating. Every little detail is calculated. This is craft on parade. This is genius on parade. This is not Frank Lloyd Wright throwing together a cube and calling it a house.
This whole thing sounds to me as if it's from some kind of fraternal organization or a mystic group. I mean, this whole thing, the first phrase that popped up into my head was Pythagorean theorem and the Pythagoreans.
Let me tell you something. Go back and reread the first 2 chapters of my little book, Microcosm and Medium, about mind manipulation. Because what are the Pythagoreans really telling you with their musical mystery? That little Pythagorean comma, as it's known in the natural harmonic series. What are they telling you? They're telling you that the tempered system of music was already known to them. It was known even to Plato, because if you really read the Republic carefully, it's a music theory treatise on tempering the natural harmonic scale. That's why he is so in love with the number 12 and not 10. Your 12 equidistant notes on the keyboard. It's a treatise of music theory. That's what he's telling you. Go reread it. So is this part of something that's been known for a while? Yeah. What happened in the Renaissance musically? All of this stuff busts out into the open. It's no longer a big secret. We can now move from key to key without having to stop and retune the instrument. What's that? That is that. Why is it secret? Why is it kept secret for so long? What's the big deal? It's just music. No. That little adjustment is the first unification in physics. It is a cosmological thing that they did when they made that little mathematical adjustment to be able to create those 12 equidistant tones, the keys that go with them, and all of the modulation that it makes possible. That's cosmology. And by the way, the cosmology is saying the universe was created good, and man was created to bring that good to its perfection. It requires a little tweaking. So this is all built into musical cosmology. And it was understood prior to the 19th century. What is J.S. Bach himself involved with? Well, he understands very well that this is going on. He writes a whole work called what? The Well-Tempered Clavier. What does tempering mean? Tempering means that equidistant musical tone system that we're used to, but tempering is also another nice way of saying tampering. That's exactly what it means. So by writing that, he's literally creating pieces to show you that now we can move from one key to another, and we don't have to stop and tune our instruments again. We no longer are stuck in the Dark Ages like Vedic India with one harmonic series for every fundamental, and no more and no less, no modulations possible. Thank you very much. What does modernism do, Chris? Modernism moves music back into microtones, all of those infinities of overtones of the natural harmonic series. And what happens to the musical public's interest in that kind of music? It tanks.
It's funny because there are a whole series of papers written and articles that were written around the 1920s when talkies were coming into play, or silent film was coming into play, because a lot of people were upset that the moralistic tendencies of plays were going out the window. And now, thanks to movies, they were able to do all kinds of things on stages, on sets, that they were not able to do. So it's almost like playing to the lowest common denominator.
Now, what else happens when movies come out?
You get recording devices now. You're going to get electronic instruments as well.
Something very significant happens. It's obvious, but people don't stop to consider the obviousness. What's the one instrument associated with church?
The organ.
Organs, pipe organs, big, huge instruments that are capable of filling up these big, huge spaces with lots of noise. Okay. What happens when talkies come along? Or pardon me, when silent movies come along?
Pianos.
Got tinkling pianos.
Or in the big movie palaces, you're not going to fill the big movie palace with a tinkling piano.
Got the organ.
Theater organs.
Right.
Okay.
Theater organs. What happened? The movie palace became the new temple. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. The liturgy becomes the movie. The movie becomes the spectacle. The mystery is taken out of the church. The mystery is expunged, and we take all of the remaining shell of all of it, and we bring it in to the movie palace. Oh, by the way, who controls most of that?
Oh, I think Henry Ford put his finger on that one.
Now, this is not accidental. It's not accidental. It's not accidental.
You can read a lot between the lines on the attack on Christianity and divinity.
That's what I'm doing. I'm reading a lot between the lines.
I know.
It's somewhat unrelated, but even like churches, the setup of churches, when you look back biblically, to go in between the way courts are set up and the way a church is set up, there's a parallel that's on purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
About the judgment that's supposed to come down. It's the same as the judgment from God.
You go into churches and look at the three doors in a Gothic cathedral or an Orthodox church. There's always these three doors. The center door being the royal door. Well, where is that coming from? It's coming out of classical architecture. Right. And classical architecture has a cosmology as to why it's doing these things in its buildings. Again, as above, so below. You're building a structure that you think in your cultural experience is mirroring the divine order. So
how much of numerology plays a role into composition and the same structure. And this goes into a couple cool plays, but I know Chris is really into this stuff.
Well, we brought up how, Trump likes to play along astronomical and astrological.
All right.
The
all right.
ninth month, the 11th day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Numerology is suffused throughout a lot of the works of the Baroque era, particularly in J.S. Bach. You'll find it in Handel, if you know where to look. You'll find a lot of it in Handel. For example, in Handel, his setting of the Tecum Principium in the Dixit Dominus. If you look at that score, it's a very short little aria for soprano. The numerology there is self-evident if you know what you're looking for. Just go look at it. I would really urge you guys, email me and I will send you the links to these little talks about effect and lyra that I did on my website, so that you can see what I'm talking about. You get to hear me talk and attempt to play Bruno as I'm talking and worrying about where the guy that's controlling the camera is and what he's doing. But anyway, if you really want a study of how deeply encoded this music is, people have no idea. They're actually, modern musical scholars are beginning to, just now in the last, I'd say 20 years, I have a few of their books, begin to look at, re-examine the doctrine of effect and lyra and how it actually translates into the music. There for a while, it was completely ignored as being just nothing but 18th century hocus pocus and all of this, we've got to be moderns and we've outgrown all that. And, but if you miss it, you don't understand the music. There is a paper out that everyone who has an interest in the topic of numerology in this music should look at. And it's by a fellow by the name of, David Rumsey, Rumsey, and it's called the Bach Passacaglia. Passacaglia is Passacali, Calgi. Yeah, I'm having to think myself what it is, but it's called the Bach Passacaglia, and what it is it's a study of all of the Christian symbolism and numerology in a very famous organ piece by J.S. Bach. And if you want to hear the piece, I would recommend the performance of Marcus Warg, W-A-R-G-H. Performance is everything in classical music. So don't just go grab this piece of organ music. You can get a good performance or a really rotten one. I would recommend the performance of Marcus Warg because you can see it being performed, you can hear it, and then after you hear the piece, go read Rumsey's paper, and then go back and listen to the piece. Don't read it before. Don't listen after you read. Read the paper after you listen first, because it'll be interesting to see if you pick up from the music what's actually going on. There is something going on. So, this is not to say this is program music either. It's not. That's the other thing people get lost in. This is a set of musical rhetorical gestures. It's not a pictorial language. It's not tone painting. It's not Richard Wagner.
Right.
This is declamation in the classical sense. This is rhetoric in the classical sense. That's what it is.
So, Greg, I hope you're happy with your 432 question.
I am actually.
All of that, folks. Will the guy ever shut up?
I learned a ton just now, and I have great recommendations. So, yes, Michaels, I'm glad I ate my humble pie, and I enjoyed it as well. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how much more time we got here.
Well,
This is fantastic.
I want to ask, so, Joseph, in Gene Shine's Monsters and Men,
Yes.
you write about the Anakai, and you try to break down the reinterpretations of the different text, right? In there, you talk about the academic translation of man as a creature deliberately created or invented for the specific function of being a laborer or serf for the gods.
Okay.
And also, number two, a creature that is a chimera a hybrid of two different creatures, the gods and some presumably pre-existing terrestrial hominid.
Okay.
And the reason I bring this up is scientists just discovered
Don't say they created man with 432 hertz.
No, the oldest form. That's funny though. Oldest form of writings in a mysterious Stone Age engraving. Not sure if you saw this. This is from over 30,000 years older than the Sumerian cuneiform from ancient Mesopotamia, which was long thought to be the oldest. I'm just curious, as you see writings now coming out that we're finding, how would that change if you were to revisit this book, your understanding of evolution of man and how we got here? And what do you think, if anything, this might have to do with disclosure that could come in the future?
Lead us, evolution, lead us up the future's endless stair. Chop us, change us, prod us, lead us, for stagnation is despair. Groping, guessing, yet progressing, lead us nobody knows where. To whatever variation our posterity may turn, squashy, bulbous-eyed, or crustacean, toward that great unknown God we yearn. On and on. That's a little poem by C.S. Lewis, which I'm mangling beyond all recognition. But anyway, I'm that's suffice it by that little poetic interlude to say I'm not an evolutionist.
Right.
What these texts would do, it would obviously depend on what these texts say, and if they contribute at all to that narrative, or if they counter it, or if they contradict it, or whatever. So I don't know.
Okay.
Until we know what the texts say, I don't know how I would respond to it on the basis of what I've already written and the texts I've read. My biggest problem with the academic, evolutionary, archaeological, ancient history narrative, my biggest problem has always been that while it purports to be an explanation of things, it really has no explanatory power at all. It's merely a dogma that you accept. For example, we're supposed to have been sitting around here on our Cro-Magnon butts for, 2.5 million years, and then all of a sudden we get a wild hair in our bonnet for no apparent reason and decide that we're going to quit hunting and gathering and start domesticating animals and growing plants. Okay. And because of that, all of a sudden, okay, well, we better have a calendar and let's invent math, and we better have a system of banking too, So all of this stuff just explodes out of nowhere. And it's because we quit hunting and gathering. The whole narrative that you learn in quackademia just never made sense to me. It's like that little picture that you had in elementary school of the giraffes growing longer necks out of evolutionary need to reach
the leaves.
Yeah, reach the leaves on the eucalyptus tree, and you're thinking, enfant terrible if you are, well, why don't the trees just grow taller too? And so we're in this endless circle where nothing actually evolves or happens. The whole system is so nutty that I just have trouble subscribing to it. So
it's very funny. Blavatsky, of all people, in her, I guess, multi-volume work, The Secret Doctrine.
The Secret Doctrine, yes.
She references all kinds of anti-evolutionists, and she just destroys Darwin left and right with these folks. I have the names in a list that I want to read, but you never hear about this stuff anymore.
No, you never do. And the reason why is they were promoting a narrative. Why? Because evolution is tailor-made if you want to promote a materialistic, godless sort of cosmological structure, which she certainly did not. But she had her own quirky version of materialism.
Yes.
Anyway,
right.
No, I think that's exactly what's going on. And the other part of it that I always found so weird was Darwin, in spite of what he was attempting to do, he always sounded a lot more like Newton trying to wind up his universe as a great big machine and just kind of let it go. I just can't subscribe to that whole cosmology. I never have. The problem. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. Finish.
Well, the problem with Darwin, as so much of quote modern thought, is it throws out teleology. In other words, it throws out the idea that there's an end or purpose for all of this, because that ultimately is a metaphysical, philosophical, and theological idea. And we can't have that. We've got to be doing pure science. Well, you might be doing complete lunacy in the name of pure science, because pure science might actually be about having an end or purpose that's inbuilt into all of these different things. So, none of this ever made sense to me, quite honestly. So where these new texts are going to go, I don't know.
Okay.
But I do strongly suspect, on the basis of everything I've just said, I do strongly suspect that they're not going to be terribly reaffirming of the modernist, mechanistic, it's all big chance cosmology worldview. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Michaels, can I get into a couple fire questions about the disclosure stuff?
I
good with that?
Sure.
All right. So, Dr. Farrell, given your research on secret government programs, books, how would you interpret President Trump publicly discussing disclosure last week before all the mess in Iran? What's your take on that? Do you think that is a signal that there's genuine transparency?
No.
Or are you expecting a controlled narrative coming?
I expect a controlled narrative. Number one, after in terms of my personal life, after watching President Kennedy get murdered, after watching his alleged assassin get murdered when I was a boy, I saw that happen. After watching Watergate, Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the savings and loan scandal, BCCI, Waco, the Oklahoma City bombing, the first World Trade Center bombing, 9/11, on and on we could go. Do I trust anything this government says? Not a chance.
No. Yeah.
Not a chance. And if all of a sudden, after 80 years of poo-pooing everybody that believed in extraterrestrials or saw UFOs or whatever, after 80 years of denouncing them as conspiracy theorists and kooks, now all of a sudden they're doing a 180 and changing their tune, right, and saying, oh, look at this video and we're going to publish it in the New York Times. Oh, look at us, how transparent we are. And huzzah, new paradise.
Huzzah.
The UFO mystery is at an end, and we're here, and they really exist, and there are people flying around in them, and they're not our friends. Okay. What I think they're doing, Greg, Chris, everybody listening, what I think they're doing is narrative preparation. And the reason I say that is I was one of the speakers at the two secret space program conferences in 2014 and 2015. And I think those conferences really had them spooked, meaning the deep state people, because the first thing that the conference did not do is they did not have all the old UFO divas come in to tell the same old UFO abduction, disclosure around the corner, Roswell was a crashed ET vessel, none of that went on. It was all people that were not well known in the UFO conference circuit that had totally different perspectives on a lot of stuff. So in other words, it was no longer the ufology narrative, and it was not the government narrative. It was something grassroots that grew up from people being fed up with both sets of narratives. As a result of that, you saw the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge, Hal Puthoff, and the whole Corey Good thing with the Blue Chickens and the Galactic Federation or whatever all that nonsense was. So you saw this intense effort to repackage a standard narrative in a massive marketing campaign. And that's what I think is going on here. It's a marketing campaign to get people to trust the government again in what it has to say about this issue.
Right.
What bothers me immensely about it is they seem to be pushing the threat narrative. I can see why they would want to do that. Because number one, if a foreign power suspects that we might have engineered technology that literally was gifted to us by crashing here, they might think twice before starting any major confrontation, military confrontation with us. The other thing it enables them to do is it enables them to continue with this massive military budget and expenditure. The problem I also have with it is, and I've said this many times, I'm sure I've said it with you guys, I've said it on other shows, I've said this many, many times. The problem when you call down high heaven on your heads is it might actually show up. And I don't think Donald Trump or the Congress or the UFO committee or Lou Elizondo or any of these yahoos have any blanking clue as to what they are invoking and playing around with. Go ahead.
No, I think we brought this up last time too, but I believe that they're going to try to make this argument that the reason why we need digital ID and your biometrics on file is because they have been here for millennia. They look just like us with slight differences. And the only way to tell us apart is with that on file. And on top of it, I do believe once this happens, they're going to make another push for interplanetary travel. Like, I want to know why Elon Musk had such a massive hard-on to go to Mars, and then all of a sudden he flips it around and says, nope, we're going to the moon.
What
happened with that? I think the digital currency is part of that because that enables corporations to now be able to pay you your digital food pellets on any planetary body.
I agree with you. I've maintained the same speculation myself for many years. I know other people have. You know, the first time I publicly entertained it or advanced the idea was at that 2015 Secret Space Program conference. That, you know, if you read some accounts of these extraterrestrials, they look human, and the only way to possibly tell the difference would be genetics. You know, Ancestry.com, send us your DNA and we'll tell you where you came from. Oh, really? Yeah. You know, that's quite a nice little database you're putting together there, Mormon Church. But anyway, that was a little aside. But anyway.
I caught what you were putting down.
Yeah.
So with the digital ID thing, I want to get to, because we did cover that last time, I want to get to a new territory, Chris, on that front. Joseph, are you saying that you believe, based upon attending this in 2014, 2015, your research, that there is either the possibility that we've been visited or the possibility that they're amongst us right now, or that it's a energy that could be demonic that shouldn't be tapped into, or could it be all three?
You know me, I'm an all three kind of guy.
Okay.
You know, I don't believe, first of all, I never have believed that the UFO phenomenon is a singular phenomenon. I believe it's phenomena.
Got it.
Plural. And the reason why I say that is because there are different types of encounters. Some are not of people flying around in a technology at all. Others are, you know, there's a whole spectrum of things that they're dealing with under the umbrella of UFO. And I think the same thing with regards to extraterrestrials. Why do we have to confine ourselves to little grays or insectoids or Nordics or, you know, all these supposed people that we've encountered? There could be all of the above, plus the one that really kind of bakes my noodle still is this idea of plasma as a life form and potential intelligent life form. So Could we be dealing with all of the above? Absolutely, of course, sure. Why would God limit himself to just one kind of intelligent creature? Now, here's the interesting thing. In the Majestic 12 Cooper-Cantwell set of documents, and I talk about this way back in SS Brotherhood of the Bell, in that set of documents, the biologist Detlef Bronk, who was alleged to have been part of the Magic 12 committee, the biologist Detlef Bronk says in one of these documents that after having examined the evidence, meaning bodies, he had come to the conclusion that we have to figure out if there is a higher order to biology as there is to physics. Now, that's a huge remark, because mathematically what he's implying is that just as we need higher dimensions to explain certain things in our physical reality, a higher dimensional mathematics. You can't explain electricity without it, for example. Just as we need that kind of higher order thinking in order to unify all of these physical forces, there is a similar indication that there's a higher order in biology. And what I think he's getting at is the humanoid form itself, us, and all of our cousins that seem to have a similar form.
Right.
And the more you encounter this form, the more intelligent on the scale of biological life that form appears to be. So, there's something about the very design of this, 2 hands, 2 feet, 2 eyes, and so on, that is intelligent.
Okay. The other part I wanted to ask about was, we've talked about advanced propulsion previously with you, anti-gravity research. Are there any other technologies that you're aware of, hypothetically, that could be exposed if the Department of Defense, DARPA, and other people start to actually give some type of disclosure? What would be the things that would be on your wish list of things to finally hear about that you've kind of heard in those conversations at those conferences, never been confirmed?
The big one,
Yeah.
the one at the top of the list that would explain everything else, and I'll tell you why I think this after I say it: artificial intelligence. Why?
Can I take a guess as to why?
Sure.
So I've actually had a theory that the reason why we've been working so hard on artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence existed before us. And we're trying to recreate something energetically that helped create where we are. So it's coming back to a roots of a foundation of a spirituality, that energy that's there. But now I want to hear what the...
Can I take a stab?
You
Sure.
take a step two.
Okay, so I think that a little bit of Greg's, a little bit more. I think that they understand that there could be some massive event occurring, such as a pole shift in the sometime near future. And so they have bet their money on artificial intelligence assisting them to last out whatever this thing is, and not the human. They're hoping that artificial intelligence will be subservient. One of the best examples of that is the wall being built in Saudi Arabia, which is meant to withstand cataclysmic events, will be using renewable energy, artificial intelligence, EVs, and everything else that you can possibly think of that fits into a 15-minute city, the bunkers that the hyper elites are building, and all the rest. I also believe, if we're going down this road, that there is an occult dimensional aspect to artificial intelligence, and I think CERN could potentially be involved with it.
Okay.
Here's where it gets schooled, Greg.
No.
I know.
I tend to think there's something to the CERN thing. I can buy the cataclysmic event thing, and that we're going to think our way out of it with artificial intelligence. I've got bad news for them. That's not how the story ends. I can buy the idea that they're trying to get back to something that they think may once have existed. Why? Well, read Ezekiel. That wonderful description of Lucifer. Thy tabrets and pipes were made perfect in thee. What's a tabret? It's a membrane. It's a membrane. What's a pipe? Well, a pipe is a pipe. So look at what you have there. You have either the description of a biological organism. Look at us. What do we have? We have membranes and pipes. Okay, that's essentially how we're made. We're a big tube. Okay, topologically speaking. Or it could be a machine. Or here's the third possibility for those of you who really want to bake your noodle. Plasmas have pipes, filaments, and membranes. So there is your primeval, really ancient, nasty intelligence, and the whole thing is being described as something artificial. Well, in a certain sense, we're artificial. Okay? Somebody decided to make us and give us intelligence and stick us into these bodies. Okay. I have a much more fundamental, pragmatic reason as to why artificial intelligence is needed. Number one, the idea that we're going to colonize the solar system using chemical rockets is nonsense. Okay. There we are, Ellen. Take it or leave it. That's the reality. Number two, any other form of propulsion is going to create problems in controlling and directing any ship that would use it. And human reflexes are simply not fast enough to do so. So you're going to have some form of an artificial intelligence autopilot that can interface, here comes the key part of it, can interface adequately and quickly with human controllers in order to work. And that's especially true if you ever get close to warp drive, which is what DARPA wants this country to be capable of before the century is out. So DARPA knows if we're going to colonize this solar system, we're going to have something like warp drive. If we're going to reach outside of this solar system to even the closest solar system outside of it, we're going to have something like warp drive. There's no other way. The speed of light is simply too slow. Okay.
And do you think central banking, digital currencies, digital ID, and all that is tied to
yes,
them releasing this kind of technology so that they have complete control over its distribution?
I've said it many times. I've said it with Catherine Fitz. I said it in Babylon's Banksters. The reason they haven't let this technology out is because they cannot control it. They don't have the surveillance mechanism in place to control everybody. That's why this is essential. You don't want, look, 0 point energy. If you weaponize 0 point energy, you have a weapon that would make a hydrogen bomb look like a kitchen match. Okay, it's that powerful. You don't want some, and if you have the engineering principles, anybody in their garage could tinker with this if they can buy the right equipment. So you don't want people tinkering with a planet-busting technology on a scale of 7 billion human beings living on a planet. That's what you don't want. Okay? So yeah, did JP Morgan have a good reason for shutting Tesla down after Tesla says, oh, by the way, folks, I forgot to tell you, you can make a really cool weapon out of this stuff too. So yeah, is Morgan a little concerned? Yeah, justifiably. Yeah, probably so. So that's the other reason I think you've got this push for digital. And there's a third reason. And Catherine Fitz and I have been talking about this and kicking it around publicly in our really interesting private discussions. but the other thing is, you're going to need some sort of system of financial clearing for interplanetary finance and economics to occur. And you need something that therefore can move quickly. That again implies artificial intelligence. It implies a system able to communicate at, let's say, warp speed. In other words, we don't want to have all sorts of financial shenanigans happening in the 20 or so minutes it takes a radio wave to reach from Earth to Mars, when they're in opposition with each other. So that's the other thing. You've got to plan your financial system out very, very carefully. And I think that's exactly what they're doing. The big thing that got us together, Catherine and I, was we were approaching the problem of all of this missing money from opposite places and coming to the same conclusion. Catherine's noticing all this money is missing from the government, and where the heck is it going? And I'm noticing all this hidden system of finance. And again, where's all this money going? Because in both cases, we had a problem that we couldn't explain. None of it was showing up as hyperinflation. None of it. It was just going, and it's all this liquidity, and why wasn't it showing up? Well, the conclusion is if you've got an electrical circuit and power is being leached or bled off somewhere, it's going to some load in the circuit that you don't know about. Mm-hmm. So our conclusion is, and was, it's going off planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the conclusion.
That's an interesting conclusion.
That's an interesting conclusion. Yes, it is indeed.
So, okay. We see in Venezuela about a month ago, Trump states that, they incapacitated the Venezuelan military with what he called a discombobulator. Yes. And there were reports that came out that people couldn't move. They lost control of their limbs. It was almost like they mind control. They didn't see the weapon, but they felt the weapon. In this disclosure movement, in this reverse engineering, possibly, are we, and even Israel's now saying direct energy weapons were used yesterday to take down Iranian missiles, which just, when I did the Lahaina story in Hawaii, I was told I was a conspiracy theorist for reporting that a resident felt that they saw this.
Yeah.
Are we seeing reverse engineering of technology finally out in the public? Or is this just DARPA's finally developed this on our own? And how will disclosure possibly change weapons? Because you brought up a great point about 0 point could wipe out the earth for putting it in their own hands.
That's a very subtle question. Are we seeing exotic technology in play? Yes. Notice I did not say reverse engineered technology. I said exotic technology.
Noted. Yep.
Noted. And I'll get into my rant as to why I very seldom go to reverse engineering. You'll notice that the people in Venezuela that reported that they couldn't move, that to me, the first time I heard that, I said, ding, 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 abductees. UFO abductees who report, I was paralyzed. They were communicating telepathically with me, and I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. Well, here's the problem. The technology to, first of all, inject voices into the brain remotely without any physical contact have been around since the 1970s. And this very simple microwave interferometry and modulation of a voice onto those microwaves that will do the trick. So yeah, you can literally beam voices into people's head and make them think, oh, I'm hearing the voice of God or Satan or my guardian angel or someone telling me to go murder John Lennon, son of Sam. All of this stuff. So does this technology exist? Yes. Are they using it? Yes. Obviously. Where I part company is the reverse engineering part, because this is what really has put me off ufology for most of my life, is this constant rush to explain every human innovation as coming from a reverse engineered craft. Now, I'm all for reverse engineering in a story like the Nazi Bell, where we have details in the original account of the story that indicate or point you in a direction within physical science that can tell you why that detail is there. In other words, you can reverse engineer the story and come to a plausible prima facie explanation of what they might have been up to on the basis of the detail and a little reverse engineering thinking. That kind of reverse engineering, yes. But crashed UFOs to explain everything, no. Because that's an explanation that leads you nowhere. Sooner or later, we're going to have to start crashing stuff on ET's home planet so he can catch back up with us. It's this circular reasoning that people are employing that I object to in this reverse engineering thing. Because what it does, and this is the key point, what it does is it prevents the investigator, the researcher, from going to the human scientific literature and seeing if there is an antecedent there. It actually short circuits explanation rather than aids it. That's my big problem with it. So is all of this stuff from a crashed UFO? Maybe, but I doubt it.
Right.
Are they going to try and spin it as technology from a crashed UFO? That they would do.
And so you would see that almost as a warning sign.
Yes.
That they've simplified. So if we see in this disclosure movement in the coming months or year that this might play out, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I've often heard that, NASA talks to the Pope about different discoveries. And I've always found that interesting before they make an announcement to the public. I would imagine something like disclosure, you would want to have the same exact conversation because our understanding of our history, our understanding of world religion, our place in the overall universe, I think could be shattered overnight should this be disclosed in a way that changes understandings. What are safeguards that likely should be put into place? Is it best to rip the Band-Aid off the people, or is there some safeguards in order to keep the order of society and not have people's reality shattered?
I'm not certain I understand what you mean by rip the Band-Aid.
So if they were to say tomorrow that, energy like electricity can be evil and Luciferian, and we've been able to have portals and here's scientific evidence of communication with deities, there'd be people that would just reject the information from the get-go. But if they were able to start showing, hey, here's this CERN lab experiment where this is the message that we got, and here's what happened, it's documented.
Okay.
People might start to look at the religion that they practice in a different way. And I think that could shatter your reality, so to speak, of the order that we have put faith perspective into society.
You're really asking a theological question.
I am. Yes, that's correct.
Well, first of all, let's dispatch with NASA talking to the Pope. If NASA really wants to get into what Christianity has to say about these things, they should not only be consulting the Pope, they should make sure that the Pope is really Roman Catholic when they do. Okay. Recently, we've had a string of a few people that are kind of questionable on that score.
No argument from me. Yep.
Yeah. If you're going to talk to the Catholic Church, make sure they're really Catholic when you do. And I would say if they're gonna get a balanced perspective, they need to talk to traditional Lutherans and Calvinists and Anglicans and so on and so forth. In other words, don't go to just one group for an opinion, for an imprimatur or an infallible statement on what you're going to do. My big problem theologically has always been that these types of questions, I read the Church Fathers. That's my degree. I spent most of college reading on my own, reading these early Christian writers, simply because I knew I wasn't getting the right answers from either my professors or my local priest or so on, because they'd never been taught and they didn't have any inclination to go out and find out these things. But when you read some of these early Christian writers, they are up to their earlobes in reacting to some of the common cultural and religious assumptions of their day. Things like giants, strange sights in the sky that they can't explain. It's full of it. In other words, they are directly confronting these issues and not afraid to write about them. I'm not afraid to write about them because, number one, I'm a traditionalist in terms of my doctrinal thinking. And I think that that's the only way and the only basis from which one can address these questions. So the problem I have is, why is nobody doing it? It's as if the church is being left intentionally undefended and offering itself to be blindsided by an event or a series of issues or new concepts or something that it is not well prepared for. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that the people who are involved in the various churches in looking at these things are by and large not traditionalists. They couldn't pass a test in Thomistic theology if their life depended on it. So, this is my problem. All of my books, every single one of them, and people have to understand this, all of my books are tied together, and that includes my theological books. And that's the part people forget about. I'm doing this because I've noticed the church is not ready for these things at all.
Which, by the way, I almost forgot this. Our last show, you ended with a masterful take on the Filioque.
Oh, the
Filioque. The Filioque, you told us about how that shapes your entire worldview.
Yes.
And you laid out a masterful part about what that meant for the Catholic Church versus the Eastern Orthodox Church. Mm-hmm. And literally within a week, Pope Leo wrote about this and basically said that the Catholic Church has been wrong. And I don't mean wrong in the sense of, he said, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, get excommunicated for making that statement. But basically he said wars were fought, people were killed over this.
Yes.
People have been discriminated. Yes. And instead of proclaiming the merciful God that we should have, we have a vengeful God who has punished over this and has fractured the church, and that we need to get beyond this. We need to move forward. And I couldn't believe that you just laid this all out. And it's almost like Pope Leo listened and was like, I need to listen to what Joseph Farrell says.
I doubt he did. Very much. I know. I have not read his statement. I will tell you that we Orthodox have been listening to Rome try and paper over what it needs just to finally come out and say we were wrong. The doctrine is wrongly formulated. It has had these effects on our theology. We sincerely repent to our Eastern Orthodox. Rome has not done that. There has been no abrogation of the doctrines that have resulted from adopting that system of theology, the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, which I prefer to call the dogma of the Immaculate Deception, because it's based on a false understanding of the doctrine of original sin. Okay, on and on we could go. There are Roman additions to the deposit of the faith that have been made with and by the aid of the papal authority itself, and until those and the authority that underwrote them is brought out for the heresy that it is, there can be no communion. I don't care what the ecumenical patriarchate of Constantinople decides to do in concelebrating with an apostate Roman Catholic Church. That's what it is, and that therefore makes the ecumenical patriarch. That's where I'm at. In other words, he may say that, yeah, it was a big mistake. Has he forced the church in communion with him to remove it from the creed? Is he directing
yes.
Is he directing?
He did.
Is he directing the seminaries that teach theology? That's my point. It's not about removing the word. It's about removing the word and the system of thinking that goes through it.
Okay.
Until that happens, if he understands there is a a theological problem that it's set up? Yes. But has he also tied those other doctrines? Purgatory, the way that the vision of God is taught in the medieval scholastics, and on we go. Right. Again, you won't understand how deep this is until you work through that second volume of my tome, and you'll see, because I lay out in that outline of Augustinism, I lay out not only Roman Catholic theology, but the disputes within Dutch Reformed Calvinism that are tied to it, the disputes within Lutheranism that are tied to it. Everything is tied to this doctrine. Everything.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
everything.
You laid it out perfectly. And matter of fact, we got tons of comments on YouTube about that.
Oh, I know you do. Yeah, people haven't heard it before.
No, it was brilliant. People were like, this is the best interview we've ever heard, because they really enjoyed the way you laid out all that. It was awesome. People really enjoyed it.
Do I think Roman Catholics are non-Trinitarian? No, I don't.
Right.
Your average Roman Catholic believes in the doctrine of the Trinity every bit as much as I do. I'm not quibbling with them. What I quibble with is the effect that the doctrine has had on their piety. That's where it gets very interesting. I know some wonderful friends where I live that are Roman Catholic, and when they pray, and it just makes me great. When they close their prayer, it's, they're praying to God the Father through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
And where's the Holy Spirit? I'm a Trinitarian Christian. I don't pray a Binitarian prayer. And those little things in the ritual books are actually liturgical shorthand. If a liturgical book says glory, and I think this is what I was saying in the last time, in a liturgical book, it'll say glory. Okay. Does that mean you suddenly stand up and shout glory? No, that's not what it means. It's a liturgical shorthand for a formula that goes, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, unto all ages of ages. Amen. Period. That's what you say. Yep. So that's what, through Jesus Christ our Lord, period, in the liturgical books is trying to tell you. It's a liturgical shorthand that you put the whole doxology there each and every time you pray. Just crossing yourself doesn't mean that covers the whole thing. Right. That's stinking thinking Vatican II lazy low mass Saturday afternoon quickie mass that you're in and out in less than 20 minutes. Come on. No. Yep. Yeah, sorry.
You got to get that drive-through window. Hey,
just to get the drive-through window.
Just to wrap up the disclosure, I had one question, but I'll two questions, but I'm going to put it as one.
Yeah.
So my final thing on this, I'm turning to Michael's. I got some good stuff here. Is there any specific documents? You mentioned AI would be like that one big reveal. Mm-hmm. Any specific documents or treaties or projects that you've heard of that you're like, oh, I'd want to see that? And then to end this kind of segment, I want to know, is there any credible sources or people or signals that you personally follow that would give you some confidence that there's some veracity to the disclosure? Who should I be paying attention to if they agree or they call it out? Who would Joseph Farrell go to?
That's a good question. I can't think of any name that I would say you can automatically trust this person. My advice would be rather to say that anybody who tells you a narrow narrative, be mistrustful of. In other words, by narrow narrative, I mean, first of all, are they friendly or hostile? And if they're asking you to choose one or the other, then I would say be extremely skeptical. If they're presenting it more, okay, here's the evidence for this, and here's the evidence for that, and here's all these different types of beings that we think are out there, then yeah. But for me, the crucial test is going to be whether, if at any time, those with whom they are in alleged contact or alleging to disclose are saying that your human science is false, or your human religion is false, or your human political organization is false, in any way that would suggest a moral dichotomy between behavior on this planet and any other, Follow me? It's the old idea that infiltrated ufology, that, well, ET must be so advanced, much more advanced than us, that they must be morally superior to us. And therefore, they might be living by a higher morality, and therefore it's okay for them to come down here and do grisly experiments on human beings. The moment you start hearing that sort of thing, and by the way, it's been around ufology for a long time, and I absolutely abhor it, because what it's really telling you is, okay, you get to go out and torture people because you're more scientifically advanced. If you introduce that kind of moral dichotomy into your cosmology, or if anyone pretending to be about disclosure is talking in those terms, be aware and run like hell. We've heard that line from the Nazis. We've heard it from the Soviet Bolsheviks. We're hearing it from the transhumanists now. We don't need another go-around sponsored by ET.
And that's the thing. I truly believe that this thing, whatever it may be in the background, that's pushing humanity and the world into this kind of direction, they don't like humans.
They don't.
Whatever this may be. And they're doing a lot to make that known. And I don't understand why more people don't realize this. From the COVID stuff, endless wars, digital ID, disclosure nonsense. I mean, I'm with you. You've been lying to us for 8 decades, and now you're going to tell us the truth. Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Right? Project Blue Beam, be damned, right? They're going to try to incorporate almost everything, religion, science, sci-fi, into one big, wonderful narrative so that everyone from all walks of life can accept it.
Yep. That's where AI will help them, because they will use it to construct the narrative.
100%. 100%. And all the while, the theme song to this is in 432 hertz. It's just astounding.
No. What they're gonna the theme song is gonna be updated Green Acres theme song.
Green Acres is the place
for me. Farm living is the life for me. Land spread out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me that countryside. Yeah, that's what it's gonna be. You know, it's gonna be Vic Mizzy's theme songs on parade, but no, it's going to be an absurdity, and I hate to break it to people, but the naysayers are going to be few and far between.
Yeah,
because
people want to believe this stuff because they've been so demoralized and their divinity has been so removed that they have nothing else to clamor onto except movies and the movie house, and this is what movies have engineered them how to think. Sci-fi, Terminator, Alien, Star Trek, The Borg, whatever you've got.
And isn't it funny? Spielberg has his movie coming out this summer.
Yes.
And to do all this, they had to first attack what institution?
The church.
The churches. That's where it began. I lived through it in the Methodist Church, saw it happen in the Episcopal Church. My Roman Catholic family saw it happen in their church. And I always warn people, every church within Christendom, bar none, every church is co-opted, but you're not going to find any substitute for what they were and what they had in their traditional manifestations. All the rest of it is, you're trying to feed nourishment and nutrition with empty calories. All the rest of it is junk food. And it's, we're seeing the result. It's like you say, people are losing their contact with their divinity, with their being in the image of God, and they're trying to fill it with empty calories. It's not working.
Yeah,
ET is going to be the biggest empty calorie of them all, and they're going to play that up for all they're worth, and they are.
Yeah, and I honestly think that the church is where it sort of devolved, because if you go today in polite society, You could say things like, "Oh, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish, I'm Hindi, I'm Sikh," but as soon as someone says, "Oh, I'm a Christian," that's it. The room goes silent.
The room goes
It
silent.
piles out.
Yep.
That we don't want anything to do. Oh my goodness, he brought up Jesus.
Yeah.
That now he's going to proselytize against us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's clear social engineering.
Yeah.
And it's sad. And I think we really have to come around to some renewed version of faith. I don't know what it is. I can promise you it ain't Christian Zionism.
No.
It ain't that. I'm not going to buy it.
No.
But something has to change.
Well, it is happening. The other thing that's happening is that more and more, I call it the curmudgeon crowd. You're seeing more and more curmudgeons waking up within every single ecclesiastical tradition. And the interesting thing about these curmudgeons is they really don't care what their hierarchies say they should do or be. If the hierarchs are not saying or doing or being what they should be, the people just walk and take their money with them. And I think you're going to see. It's interesting. I just talked about this the other day. I forget with who. Benedict XVI, before he was dying, toward the end of his life, he was studying a fellow by the name. It was in my vid chat. He was known to be studying a fellow by the name of Tychonius. Tychonius was an early Donatist. Donatism is an early Christian heresy, but it's a very subtle one because it's actually a heresy about the church. And it's very subtle. And like all heresies, there's an element of truth to it. The problem with the heresy is it simply magnifies and blows that truth out of all proportion to everything else. That's usually what they are. And Benedict was studying Tychonius because Tychonius actually had this theory of recapitulation that was an ecclesiastical version of recapitulation, that because of what happened to Christ, it will be mirrored in the life of the church, and that the church would die, literally die, before it was reborn. And I think what you're looking at, and when I read that, when I found that out about Benedict XVI, it made sense to me that he would be interested in that because he's watching his church die. And there's really nothing he can try or do that's gonna save it. I think that's true of all of them. They're all in the process at some point of an ecclesiastical death. Look at the Church of England. Graffiti in Canterbury Cathedral and a woman bishopette, whatever.
Interesting
Interesting
sidebar about the individual, not only the art director for the cathedral, but the artist himself. They are not of the Christian faith.
Oh, gee, fancy that. Well, we've got to be inclusive now, don't we? We've got to be inclusive.
Greg,
yeah.
I'm going to ask a final question if you let me go on. So do you have any final questions? We've bent Joseph's ear for a long time.
We've covered a ton. I've annoyed Dr. Farrell for the first time ever in my life.
Yes,
and
the 432.
So we're going to title this episode 432 Mysticism. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, no.
No, we're not.
Listen, everybody on my website has heard me rant about that for so many times.
It'd be like, doesn't this guy follow anything? How do you ask that? Like I said, it led to great conversation beyond that, which is what I was really looking forward to. I'm good.
Yeah, you do this on purpose. You hit my hot buttons and then just sit back.
I gotta come up with a good one.
Let the dude rant away. It's good for ratings, but
give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want. Give them a good rant.
I mean, I even got a couple of hat tips today. The fedora came off. So I feel like I've accomplished what I needed to today. So take it away, Michael. It's all you.
The final question, Joseph. What are you working on next?
Oh boy, you know me. I very seldom say exactly what it is I'm working on next.
Show some ankle.
No. My ankle? No. No, I'd I'd have to get it waxed.
Yeah, you haven't shaved.
Anyway, yeah, I haven't shaved. No, actually, my hair on the bottom of my leg is disappearing because I wear these long socks all the time. But
Yeah.
anyway, what am I working on next? I can say this: I'm working on something that occurred to me about 10 years ago, but I've never really figured out a way to do it, and I'm still not sure I have figured out a way to do it. I'm just kind of I'm trying to fill in the gap in a story that has been there in my published oeuvre for a long time, and I know how I want to do it, but I haven't been able to find the information that I know is out there somewhere to really cinch the case. So what I'm having to do is fill in the missing middle part of the story, kind of circumstantially. In other words, I'm lacking. I know there's a smoking gun out there that is the one quotation that will tie it all together if I can just, but I haven't been able to find it. Now, that doesn't mean that what I'm doing is going to be bad. It'll be interesting. I think maybe even entertaining in a couple of spots, but I know there's something out there and I just haven't found it. But I am
It's almost like you have to, it's almost like you have to think as if you were a person of the time.
Yes.
And what their conclusions were and what their thought processes were prior to
AI
2020 vision.
No, I will. That is something.
I'm kidding.
It's a serious question, though. That is something I need to tell people. I will use a search engine certainly to try and find things, but artificial intelligence I will not use.
Yeah, which I've almost forgot to bring this up, Michaels. But you saw that the Pentagon is no longer going to use Claude. Now, what's really interesting about that AI is that was supposed to be the moral AI that was supposed to have safeguards against taking immoral action. So I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, a little side note, not trying to run us on for another, 25
we are
minutes.
No longer going to be moral.
Yes.
Right.
As if there ever was.
The bombing happened 24 hours later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
See ya, Claude. Okay, drop the bombs.
Yeah, see ya, Claude. Drop the bombs. Yeah, it's such a circus, and it's going to get worse, unfortunately.
I know.
I just,
We'll persevere. We'll get through.
Yeah, I know. I just can't stand dry, drunk Hegseth anymore. I'm sick of everyone, all of the talking heads. Laura Loomer is nauseating. What I saw from her over
following
the weekend.
that account, Michaels.
I'm sick of everything. I almost became completely apathetic over the weekend and just went, I don't care. I don't care about anything.
All right. Have any of you heard, and for those of you listening, have any of you heard of Vincent Shkreli?
Vincent Shkreli?
No, don't search for it.
I haven't.
Shkreli. Wasn't he the pharma?
No.
Wasn't he the pharma dude?
No, hang on. When you guys get offline, email me. Email me, and I will send you the Effect and Lyra links. That's
okay.
Promise number one. All right. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to go on YouTube.
Okay.
And you're going to do the following search for the poetry of Joe Biden.
Oh, yeah, right. That was classic. I remember that.
If everybody else hasn't heard it, go out and have a good laugh. It can be worse than the Trump administration. It can be senile, demented, and incapable of finishing any thoughts.
Yep. Michael, you remember when I used to do songs with Joe Biden?
Oh, yeah.
And I used to have him getting his ice cream and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, Chris. I think this administration is like a bad Looney Tunes cartoon, and it's not even entertaining. It's just
No, it's hackneyed. It's trite. It's. There are no twists and turns at this point.
However, 2026 does have one very bright spot on the horizon.
What's that?
Coyote versus Acme is supposed to be released this year.
Ooh. I thought they nuked that film.
They did, but if you've been keeping up with it, the film was sold. It's supposed to premiere this year.
Oh, I thought it was destroyed. That's great.
No.
Yeah, I thought when they filed the bankruptcy, it got destroyed. That's exciting.
They originally wrote it down for a tax write-off.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
But the outcry was so severe that somebody apparently bought the rights to it, and that's what I've heard. You can go on YouTube and find it out. I will definitely break my rule that I'm never going to a movie theater again just to see that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I read the original article when Coyote versus Acme appeared as an article, and I howled and I said, somebody's got to make a movie of this. And finally somebody did. It looks to be pretty good. They've got Steve Martin in some role as some sort of high executive at Acme Corporation.
Yeah, August 28th, 2026 is the release date.
It's the release date for
John Cena, Will Forte, Eric Bauza is playing Wile E. Coyote. Oh, This is great.
Yeah,
an all-star cast.
An all-star cast. Yes, I'm there for it, folks. We'll probably come out of the theater thinking we're living in it.
Yeah. This is a documentary.
This is a documentary of 21st century America.
Joseph,
anyway, yes.
Where can people find you if they want your books, if they want your website, if they want your musings?
My musings or my musics?
Either one.
Either one. Website is www.giza, G-I-Z-A, Death Star. There it is, Giza Death Star. That's where they can find me. You can click on my email there and email directly to me. My books are there. Under the About tab is where you'll find my books. Yeah, there they are.
Look at all those books.
Yeah. It's exhausting to look at. Oh, my word. But anyway, pardon me, and I don't even think that's all of them. But anyway, the music. Pardon me, excuse me. The music they can find, I think, on YouTube. You have to look for my name, but somebody remixed all of my original mixtures and remixed them and re-released. There's not much there. It's too much for me to try and sit at the computer and poke those notes into the music programming program from the score, and I don't have the patience or time to do it. But anyway, there's a little sampling there. Nice. But that's where. All right, Shiloh. Just my dog she knows that I'm ending. Yes.
It's dinner time for everybody.
It's dinner time for Shiloh.
Looking forward to it.
Just a minute. Yes.
All right, everybody. Greg, thanks for joining in, even though you were late.
Yeah, I know I was fashionably late, but Dr. Farrell, as always, it's a pleasure. I'm so glad that
thanks
catch up again.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
All right, Joseph. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Do not be a stranger. I'm sure we will come back to you, and we will be in touch.
Yeah.
Greg,
let me know when you get the show up. Just send me the links and everything.
You bet. We will. Talk to you soon, guys.
In the archives where the shadows play, he digs through history, clears the gray. Ancient tech, forgotten lands, mysteries crumbling in his hands. From the Giza pyramids to cosmic schemes, financial warfare and hidden dreams, connecting